Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our Cocoa Festival 2020 virtual conference, Africa Cocoa and Chocolate Forum. Thank you for joining us. Your Excellencies, Your Majesties, our special guests, and forum theme speakers, panel speakers, our very distinguished guests. I want to welcome you to the 2020 Cocoa Festival Conference, the Africa Cocoa and Chocolate Forum, with the theme, Transforming the Cocoa Industry for Impact with Focus on Africa Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA. We have very interesting topics to discuss today, but before I hand over to the moderator, who will be guiding us through the panel speakers, I would like to introduce the chairman of Cocoa Festival and invite him for his opening remarks. My name is Yemisi Jenkins. I am the global coordinator for Friends of Eti-Oni and a civil servant with over 20 years in both operational and strategic roles. Our chairman for today is Rear Admiral Peter Sola Adeniyi, retired, DSS MNI OFR. Rear Admiral Adeniyi is a highly accomplished retired senior naval officer, a strategist, a diplomat, and an administrator with experience spanning over 35 years. He started his military career at the Nigerian Defense Academy in Kaduna in 1974, and later trained at some of the best naval institutions around the world. He had his basic naval courses at the Britannia Royal Naval College, Dartmouth, United Kingdom, his specialist course in naval communication at the Indian Naval College, Vendurate, India, and his naval staff courses at the prestigious Royal College Staff College, Greenwich, London. He is an alumni of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, Kuru Jos, also known as NIPS. As a seasoned professional, he commanded various classes of sea-going vessels, which include fast attack craft missiles, and the Nigerian flagship Nigerian naval ship Aradu. He was a two-time flag officer commanding, firstly, the Sea Training Command, and then the Eastern Naval Command, a two-time principal staff officer at the Naval Headquarters, Abuja, as the Chief of Administration and the Chief of Policy and Plans. Admiral Adeniyi served in representative capacities twice outside Nigeria, as the leader of the Nigerian Navy training team to Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, and as the defense advisor to the Republic of Cameroon with concurrent accreditation to Central African Republic and Congo, Brazzaville. Admiral Adeniyi is well decorated with both military and national honors, which includes the Distinguished Services Star, DSS, member of the National Institute, MNI, and officer of the Order of the Federal Republic, OFR. Admiral Peter Sola Adeniyi is a member of the advisory board of Eti-Oni Development Group and was nominated as chairman of Cocoa Festival in November 2017. Dear all, please help me to welcome again Rear Admiral Peter Sola Adeniyi, retired. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Yemisi. Your Excellencies, Your Majesties, the special guest, forum theme speaker, the panelists, participants, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. At about this period last year, we were at Eti-Oni savoring the beauty and serenity of the environment, listening to impactful presentations on cocoa, having engaging discussions and enjoying the hospitality of His Royal Majesty and the people of Eti-Oni with no inkling as to what year 2020 was holding in stock for us. As we all now know, year 2020 has been a peculiar year for everybody all over the world due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The world has experienced different kinds of economic, social, and political challenges and distortion. Notwithstanding, however, the world has found a way to do things differently. The annual Cocoa Festival has also not been spared by the challenges created by the pandemic, and we will have achieved much more by interacting physically with hundreds of different cocoa farmers, entrepreneurs, stakeholders, and enthusiasts that will have gathered at Eti-Oni for a whole week-long activities. In it all, to God be the glory. I'm highly delighted that we are able to move with the times to come together today on Africa Cocoa and Chocolate Forum to discuss and cross-fertilize ideas on the theme transforming the cocoa industry for impact with focus on African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA. Less than a month ago, the President of Nigeria with the Executive Council ratified the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which is expected to take effect from 1st January 2021, which is barely a month from now. This will translate to a market size of over 1.3 billion people in Africa. To this effect, no sector of the economy should be left out of these growth opportunities. The agricultural sector in Africa stands to gain the most if well harnessed. It is sad to note, however, that the cocoa industry in Africa currently has only a paltry annual market share of about $5 billion out of over $200 billion income from the annual global output. This is in spite of the fact that Africa produces about 75% of the total world cocoa. We at Eti-Oni Development Group, EDG, have been promoting the Cocoa Renaissance Initiative since 2014, the aim of which is to create the cocoa culture by building the bridge between production and consumption, optimize the value proposition that cocoa offers, and to create wealth equitably for all within the cocoa value chain. This is envisaged to pull farmers out of poverty and transform our society for the better by creating the necessary inputs for sustainable development and progress for the good of all. It is noteworthy that cocoa production in 2019 from Nigeria was about 240,000 tons, which accounted for about 5% of global production. Meanwhile, export of cocoa, that is as beans, raw or roasted, whole or broken, in 2017 was valued at $8.6 billion globally. This is expected to grow at a rate of 7.3% between 2019 and 2025, thus translating to a value of not less than $16.3 billion. This projected growth for cocoa coincide with the rollout of African Free Trade Area. The retail market value of the chocolate industry, which has a market share of cocoa consumption at 43% is about $107 billion in 2017 and is expected to grow to about $190 billion by 2026. Today, we have a good number of seasoned speakers who are going to address several sectors of the cocoa industry with more details and recommendations on how the industry in Nigeria and Africa could optimize the opportunity of this global growth alongside the rollout of African Continental Free Trade Area. The future is bright for Africa and the cocoa industry if appropriately harnessed. The time to invest in cocoa and its value chain and to take vantage position through the various windows of opportunity for Africa is now. Let us seize the moment. On this note, I hereby declare this conference open and wish everyone fruitful deliberations as I pray for better days ahead. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Rear Admiral Peter Sola Adeniyi, retired, for your welcome. Housekeeping before we move on. To all our speakers, when you want to speak, you would have to unmute yourself. Please, you would have to unmute yourself. And for the purpose of GDPR, for those of us in the UK, we are actually recording this event. I need to let you know that we are actually recording. We will have a Q&A session, and we'll encourage people to please be precise and go straight to their questions. You only have 15 seconds for your question, because we're very, very limited on time. Please ensure to stick to 15 seconds. I'll now go ahead and introduce our moderator for today. I'm the anchor, Prince Bimbo Olashore. Prince Abimbola Olashore is a seasoned investment banker who, over the years, has acquired in-depth knowledge and vast experience in capital market and as well as financial advisory services in the public and private sector. Mr. Olashore began his career in Deloitte, Adetono, Isiche & Co. in 1987, where he did his accounting articles and became a qualified chartered accountant in November 1990. He became the Chief Executive Officer of Lead Capital PLC in July 2007 and was involved in promoting the firm into a fully fledged investment banking outfit with subsidiaries involved in stock broking, asset management, and advisory services with branches nationwide. The firm has established itself as a leading independent boutique investment banking institution under his leadership. He resigned as CEO of Lead Capital PLC in December 2015 to promote an advisory firm, Lead Advisory Partners, advising entrepreneurs in growing their business. He is a well sought after speaker on economic and financial matters. He holds several professional memberships and directorship. Please join me to welcome our moderator, Prince Bimbo Olashore. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And good morning and probably good afternoon in some jurisdictions to all our participants. First of all, I will join the chairman in welcoming your excellencies, your majesties, special guests, speakers, most particularly our participants to this year's Cocoa Virtual Conference with the theme Transforming the Cocoa Industry for Impact. We focus on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I mean, the chairman has already given us some statistics about the cocoa industries, but it's just up to say that I think 54 out of 55 African countries have signed the agreement, covers 1.3 billion people, with a GDP size of over $3.4 trillion. So it shows that Africa is bracing itself for more integrated trade. And we all know agriculture forms a great part of it, and cocoa obviously is going to play a very big role. But for me, it's just to moderate and just guide things along. So I'll just move on to all our speakers. And I think we have our theme speaker as no other person than Mr. Francis Anatogu, who will be joining us from Abuja. I'll be speaking on what the African Continental Free Trade Area means for agriculture and agribusiness. Mr. Anatogu is a senior special assistant to the president on public sector matters and secretary to Nigeria's National Action Committee on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. In that role, he heads the secretariat and coordinates the AfCFTA readiness programs of government ministries and agencies, and also private sector stakeholders. He's also the secretary of the Presidential Committee on the Impact and Readiness Assessment of AfCFTA, and coordinated the Advocacy, Impact and Readiness Assessment, decision analysis, and stakeholder engagement that resulted in Nigeria joining the African Continental Free Trade Area. His expertise is in the area of policy formulation and implementation, strategic planning, organizational transformation, and program management. He joined the presidency from Deloitte, where he was the West African Energy and Natural Resources Consulting Lead. And prior to Deloitte, he worked in a similar role at Accenture. He studied mechanical engineering at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and has an MBA from George Business School, University of Cambridge. Mr. Anatogu himself will be joining us later on, but to present his paper right now is Mr. Ogbunam Chukwura, who is a team lead export market development at the National Action Committee. So please welcome Mr. Chukwura as he delivers the paper on behalf of Mr. Anatogu. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever we are. As has been mentioned, I'll be making this presentation on behalf of Mr. Anatogu, and we're willing to take questions once we are done. Can we move on to slide 3? I think the previous speakers have done a good job in dimensioning what AfCFTA means or what it presents to us in terms of opportunity. We're looking at an area covering about 54 countries, market size with a GDP of some $3.5 trillion, and roughly about 1.2 billion people. So clearly there's an opportunity for us to scale in areas where we have opportunity and where we have capacity. But before I go into the details, I'd like to provide some background on the National Action Committee, at least to situate the operations and the activities of the National Action Committee. The National Action Committee was inaugurated on 20th of December 2019. It's chaired by the Honorable Minister, Industry, Trade and Investment. The alternative chairperson is the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. As has been mentioned, the day-to-day running and management of the Secretariat is in the hands of the Secretary of the National Action Committee, Mr. Francis Anatogu. Essentially, the mandate of the committee is to coordinate the activities of MDAs, and therefore we will not, as an agency, as an arm of government, our role is not to take over the responsibilities of any of the lead agencies, MDAs. Our responsibility is to work with them and the private sector to execute and achieve the goals that have been set for AfCFTA. In terms of scope, the regional continental readiness, what we have done is to do an assessment, and the outcomes of that assessment include the implementation of safeguards in AfCFTA Phase 1 agreements, facilitating ratification of the Phase 1 agreement. That task has been accomplished. The role of NAC is also to champion programs to resolve critical continental level challenges, as well as to conclude ongoing trade reform programs, especially at the level of ECOWAS, addressing the issues that are prevalent with the implementation of the ETLS, amongst many others. But specifically in terms of domestic readiness, our role is to facilitate productivity and production capacity enhancement programs on priority products and services, to also grow export trade capabilities of Nigerian businesses, to facilitate improvements in trade infrastructure, to improve the trade environment, to improve the coordination between trade, fiscal, and monetary policy, to facilitate an enforcement of domestic and international trade rules, and to facilitate any amendments of acts and enable the enactment of new bills as required. Next slide. Next slide, please. I think the most important thing from that particular slide is the role of the National Action Committee, which is really engagement and coordination to bring together the many MDAs that are involved or have some roles to play in the expansion of exports from Nigeria, not just to Africa, but also to the world, to ensure that there's some level of across-government coordination in policy, in actions, to ensure that our movement into these markets is seamless. Deriving from the overall AfCFTA vision is the mission which have been identified here. Essentially, we have seen that expanding our export base is critical to reducing the impact of oil on Nigeria's economic growth. For those of us who have been in Nigeria, who have experienced the effects of currency devaluation and the consequent impact of inflation on our ability to create wealth and store wealth. Nigeria's ability to create jobs for the expanding youth segment, and indeed its entire population, is a key driver, has been a key driver of youth restiveness. And therefore it is an area that we believe that any intervention should address in its execution. One of the key outcomes from the assessment is our ability to access foreign markets is seen as a major barrier to trade for Nigeria. And so resolving those barriers to market entry, market access, understanding the opportunities, but not just understanding those opportunities, but being able to navigate the opportunities to extract value, is where the National Action Committee sees its role in engaging with stakeholders. But having said that, Nigerian businesses are already extending their presence to Africa. We see them in financial services, we see them in fintech, we see them in e-commerce and in entertainment and transport. Indeed, we see them in the production of FCMGs, especially in West Africa. Next slide. What we have tried to do here is just to provide some timelines for the AfCFTA. The journey essentially, please, let's go back one slide, essentially commenced in 2018. We have achieved ratification or succeeded in securing the approval of the FEC, the FEC, to ratify the agreement. That was done on the 11th of November. This is being able to do that ahead of the commencement of trade in January 1st, 2021. Now, in preparation for the AfCFTA commencement, let's go to slide 6. An assessment was done internally to better understand and dimension the benefits and the threats that AfCFTA as a program would have on Nigeria. And what we have seen is that when you look at sectors like manufacturing and energy and agriculture, there's significant opportunities for Nigeria to meet the import demands of Africa in specific segments of those value chains, sectors of operation. And under manufacturing, we see there's a major opportunity there for auto parts, for iron and steel, for plastics, textiles, and garments. In agriculture, we see opportunities in sugar, in rice, in rubber, oil palm, and fisheries. As I mentioned earlier on, the drive to achieve export diversification is paramount to be able to manage the shocks that we've experienced in recent past, from declining oil prices, the receipts, and its implication for investment in the various sectors of the economy. The preferential access to African markets is essentially worth about $504 billion in goods, and another $162 billion in services. Our vision is to be able to achieve an expansion in the opportunities for goods and services, working with our stakeholders to achieve backward integration and local value addition, which essentially means not pushing the agenda of products, working to adapt to increase value addition within the economy, use that to drive employment, and also to drive the economy. Next slide, please. From this slide, what I really want to pull out is the existing capacities. What we see is roughly about 375,000 metric tons of cocoa production. What we have in terms of installed capacity is about 150,000. And what we are seeing in terms of functional grinding capacity is around 50,000 tons. Now, if we want to be able to increase the share of Nigeria's share of the value chain of cocoa, we need to begin to think about adding value. We need to begin to think about moving forward or ahead in the value chain, away from just the exports of the beans themselves, and begin to add value and target higher earning derivatives. Obviously, having capacity, domestic capacity, is a key driver of that. And I'm sure in this conference we'll begin to examine some of the issues around our ability to add value domestically, to create and drive consumption within the domestic market, which is significant in itself. But there's also opportunities in Africa, especially in the north, around the MENA area, and then in South Africa, to be able to push value-added products. Slide 8. Slide 8. Slide 8. What we have done here is just to look at the progression of export of beans. As I mentioned earlier on, there is an existing concentration of sales in markets in Europe. We believe that the free trade agreement would open opportunities to increase intra-African trade and build regional value chains connecting grinding hubs in South Africa, North Africa, indeed Nigeria, with production centers in Nigeria and West Africa. We did a study, we initiated a study to see how we could support the cocoa value chain in Nigeria to dimension the market in Africa. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Dimension the market in Africa and the opportunities. And essentially what we're saying is that if we continue to push beans, our opportunity for growth will be limited, but if we can add value domestically and move along the value chain, then the opportunities to grow value in receipts begin to grow exponentially. Next slide. Slides 10, 11, and 12 essentially speak to the challenges of the sector, some of the issues that need to be addressed in scaling production and improving quality and ensuring that we're able to better connect with global value chains in cocoa. And we've tried to identify a few of the issues that exist in cocoa in slide 10, in slide 11, and in slide 12. But in slide 13, what we have done, and I think I'll be rounding up there, is to summarize what our perspective is. There is strong demand for cocoa across borders, and there's a need to look at our capacity to build, to process domestically, to target higher value derivatives, and to move along the value chain to the higher value products, so that we can capture a growing share of what is the opportunity in cocoa in Africa and globally. At the level of NAC, we are committed to facilitating market identification and strategy development, the value chain analysis and its development, working with the strategic actors in Nigeria, aggregation and capacity building for the smallholder farmers, ensuring that we're able to scale by providing the capacity that the farmers need to scale their production, ensure that they minimize losses at the post-harvest stage, and scale export production, which is value addition, addressing the issues of finance and funding as they relate to our ability to finance processing. May I just say at this point that the National Action Committee is positioned to coordinate that sector activity, and we look forward to engagements with stakeholders. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chukwura, and thank you for keeping to the allotted time. Mr. Chukwura obviously gave us a background on the role of the National Action Committee in getting us ready for the Continental Free Trade Agreement. Obviously, issue of domestic readiness and also regional and continental readiness is what he spoke about. He ended up by telling us and giving us the opportunities in cocoa, and in particular the challenges that we face. At this point, I'd like to bring in our coordinator, Yemisi Jenkins, to probably acknowledge some of the dignitaries that we currently have joining us on this cocoa conference. Yemisi, please.
Thank you, Bimbo. This is to acknowledge the presence of Honorable Guy Mears, who is the High Commissioner to United Kingdom from St. Lucia. He is a friend of the House. He was actually the chair of the Cocoa Festival dinner 2 years ago. Welcome, Mr. Guy Mears, and thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your presence. Thank you. Over to you. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Yemisi, and Your Excellency, you're most welcome. So we'll move on, and as we said, we'll have Mr. Anatogu join us later on, and please, you can hold all your questions for him to answer live while he's on. Is also to let everybody know we have our special guest, Mr. Abubakar Bello, who is the Managing Director of NEXIM. We intend to bring him on around 12 noon to give his own speech. So we'll move on to Dr. Olabinto Adebowale, who is a Development Finance Policy Executive with the Central Bank of Nigeria. And he will be focusing on financing programs available for cocoa farmers and processors with consideration for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Dr. Olabinto graduated with a PhD in Development Policy and Management in 2017 from the University of Manchester, United Kingdom. He graduated with an MSc in Development Finance from the same university and is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. His current research interests include the role of finance in poverty reduction, access to finance, and the MSMEs area, financial inclusion, development finance, and MSME development. Dr. Olabinto Adebowale is referred to as the cocoa champion in CBN, and he will be speaking with us from Abuja. And like I said earlier, focusing on financing programs available for cocoa farmers and processors with consideration for the African Free Trade Agreement. Dr. Adebowale, you're welcome.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is, as being introduced, is Olabinto Adebowale. And I bring greetings from the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, also from the Deputy Governors, from my Director, Mr. Yusuf Yila. They send their greetings, and like I was introduced, I'm here representing them, and it's a real pleasure to be here. KBC, with due respect, Modobale for Adeo, and and every other dignitaries, I thank you all, and it's a pleasure being here. I'll be talking about what the CBN has done in recent time. I mean, to help develop the cocoa value chain in Nigeria. And as you are aware, why CBN is really involved in cocoa, or why we are interested in cocoa, is because it falls in line with our developmental mandate, which allows us to go into all these sectors outside the monetary policy. And cocoa is one of those commodities we're looking at. We started off with 10 commodities, and cocoa is one of them. And also, it's in line with the objective of the current administration of the country. Of the president, which is to diversify our economy and our revenue base through agriculture. I'll be going straight to. I don't know. I don't have a presentation. I didn't send it, but I don't know if I can. I have a presentation actually. I don't know how I can share it, or how I can, or do I just talk to it and so that we go on?
Please, you can speak to it. You have about 5 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I will try. Yeah. Like I said, they brought the CBN came up with a number of interventions, initiatives to support agricultural development in Nigeria, especially to develop the value chain, because we're not just looking at one aspect of the value chain, we're looking at the entire value chain. And our mantra has always been farm to table financing, and that's what we do. We try to look right from cultivation up to when it gets to the table for consumption. So what we look at, basically our intent, our deliverables are around access to finance, diversifying the economy, job creation, and then inclusive growth. And for this, we've come up with a number of interventions. And the flagship of the bank's intervention is the Anchor Brass program, which we've known and which has been supporting farmers across the country. And we've been able to have an inroad into cocoa financing. We've supported the Cocoa Farmers Association. We've supported a number of the farmers. And the Anchor Brass program, it's actually designed to create an ecosystem that links smallholder farmers to agro processors. And we've been able to do support over 2.6 million farmers nationwide. Cocoa is one of those, cocoa farmers are among those farmers we've supported. Also, like you are aware, our interventions are targeted majorly at smallholder farmers. And recently, we've been able to come up with another one that looks at looking at SME farmers, large-scale farmers. And for this purpose, recently the management of the bank came up with what we call the private sector-led accelerated agricultural development scheme. Before this, we had what we call the normal accelerated agricultural development scheme, which was implemented in collaboration with state governments. But recently, a couple of months ago, we come up with the private sector-led one, which is to allow private sector players to come in and play in that space. And also, we have what we call the Commercial Agricultural Credit Scheme, which is targeted at a big-ticket agricultural enterprise. And in these areas, we've had farmers, enterprises with large cocoa farms coming in, like the ones in Ondo State. They've been able to come in to play into this. Like I said earlier, we look beyond just cultivation. We've also tried to look at processing, and we've been able to finance a number of projects under the what we call the Risk Sector Support Facility, which is an initiative which we had with the the deposit money banks, looking at the differentiated cash reserve requirement, where banks can finance a project from their reserves. That's their cash reserve requirement. Also, we have what we call the AfCFTA, which is the Agribusiness SME Investment Scheme. These are targeted at SME entrepreneurs, and like for this purpose, we've been able to, interact with a number of enterprises, especially around those. Like we have this chocolate made in Nigeria. It's made in Nigeria by a Nigerian, and it's we interviewed her and she made it in Nigeria. We also have another one called the Chocolate, which is another one made in Nigeria, which we're getting our support. So we have this. These are under AfCFTA that we're looking at them under AfCFTA. Also, we have other interventions that are looking at exporters. We have what we call the non-oil export stimulation facility, which is looking at exporters of cocoa beans. However, I must bring, because we're not just interested in export. Yeah, export brings export of cocoa beans is not what we're interested in. The CBN is more interested in value addition. Do we have to export the cocoa before we add any value and get peanuts, or we add value and get real value for our cocoa? Cocoa product, and that's what CBN is looking at. And coming with the AfCFTA arrangement, we think this is a good one, and it's an opportunity for us to really look inward and do more value addition to our cocoa beans rather than looking at the outward, which is exporting cocoa beans. Yeah, and what we've been able to do so far is focus more on those domestic cocoa processors. Looking at 500,000 metric tons by 2024, and it's a huge task, but already we're working around the clock, and we've been having engagements. We've come up with a framework for it, and we're already thinking we're engaging state governments to give us lands to get us farmers, and so many things around it. And so these are things the CBN is doing. And the AfCFTA, which is the trade agreement, we're really interested. And we won't mind engaging with stakeholders where CBN can really play. Thank you. I'll say thank you. If there are questions to be asked, we are really interested. If there are comments to guide us in how to go about it, we are really interested. And if there are directions you think we've missed our path and we need to retrace our steps, we are really interested. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adeboale. And again, I must appreciate you for keeping to the time allotted. I mean, obviously, we expanded on what CBN has done in terms of access to finance and all the interventions that they've created. I mean, everyone knows about your Anchor Borrowers Program, and I'm quite pleased that you also thought about creating the cocoa ecosystem. And clearly, bringing in the private sector on your accelerated agri development scheme obviously is a welcome development, so not just state governments. And I thank you for committing to staying throughout the whole program so that you'll be around to take questions. But
yes,
one question we're thinking about is how do we define success? We just hang on to that. Don't get to question and answer. I'll come back to you on that. So we will move on. We'll move on first. We've been having speakers from Nigeria, so it's about time we bring in our brethren from across the continent. So next to speak will be Ange-Laurent Agmelnani, who is a fervent French Ivorian internationalist, a bilingual French, English, and social entrepreneur. And he will be speaking to us from Ivory Coast on challenges faced by cocoa cooperatives and what is required to be successful in the cocoa supply and value chain. I hope he's in the house. He is the chairman of the board of directors of the Ivorian cooperative company, Scoops, which markets cocoa beans and other quality agricultural products. On his return from Europe in 2012, he began with the help of hundreds of small farmers of Côte d'Ivoire an initiative aimed at creating a sustainable economic model in rural communities by strengthening the position of cocoa producers within the cocoa industry on the national and international markets, contributing to the empowerment of women, human development, and the preservation of the environment. So are we on from Côte d'Ivoire? I hope so.
I'm looking for him.
Coordinator. If not, we'll move on because we really don't have time on our end. I can see that we have Mr. Adrian Okello is in the house. So maybe I better move on to Adrian. We'll come back once he comes on board. Mr. Okello, like I said, we are moving across Africa. That was West Africa. Now we'll go to Uganda. And it's my pleasure to bring in Adrian Okello, who is a cocoa exporter and promoter of the Busaru Amu Cocoa Farmers Cooperative Society, which was established in 2017. The cooperative society is based in Bundibuyo district in the western region of Uganda, bordering on the Democratic Republic of Congo, and has a gross list of 200 farmers, majority of whom are smallholder farmers. The cooperative has an average production capacity of approximately 20 tons of fermented dry cocoa beans per month. The cocoa beans produced are organic with no chemical pesticides used. Mr. Okello will be speaking to us on the market dynamics of cocoa in Uganda in relation to the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. So, Mr. Okello, you are most welcome. You have the floor. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, good morning to all the participants. Thank you to the moderators. I'm going to start by giving a brief rundown of the cocoa sector in Uganda for those who are not familiar before I cross over to the relation with the Continental Free Trade Area. So Uganda's cocoa sector is dominated by smallholder farmers. Most of the cocoa produced in Uganda is actually organic. We do not have the problem that is faced in West Africa in terms of pests and diseases because we're at a higher altitude and lower humidity. In terms of standards, UTZ and Rainforest Alliance are not a common feature due to the high costs, and it's basically impossible for most of the farmer groups or cooperatives to afford this certification. In Uganda, the cocoa sector in Uganda is liberalized, fully liberalized. There's no government interference at all. We don't have a cocoa board or anything of the sort. It's free entry, free exit. What your participation is determined basically by the amount of trade finance that you have in order to buy from the farmers and export. The market is mainly dominated by foreign players. Actually, I would even non-African players. So most of the exporters are from Europe, and they control probably 90% of the market. Uganda produces, the current production in Uganda is roughly about 30,000 tons per annum. And in about 3 to 4 years' time, there'll be plenty more cocoa due to an initiative from government through the Cocoa Development Project to increase production with the goal of reaching 50,000 metric tons by next year. The main varieties grown in Uganda, we mainly grow Forestaro and Trinitario. Those are the two varieties that dominate the cocoa in Uganda. Uganda also has experienced an increased productivity due to the high demand for the cocoa. The flavor profile of the cocoa in Uganda is different from that of West Africa. It's more alkaline and as compared to the more acidic cocoa. Uganda doesn't have the capacity to, in the short to medium term, to match the likes of Ghana and Ivory Coast. So our opportunities lie, I think, in the intermediary value addition in terms of producing products such as cocoa butter and inputs. The Continental Free Trade Area will help break down tariff barriers so that we can be able to supply these intermediary inputs to countries such as South Africa, which have manufacturing entities. Because so for example, in South Africa, most of the intermediary inputs are sourced from Holland. For example, the cocoa butter is sourced from Holland, but there should be no reason as to why these intermediate inputs cannot be produced in Uganda. Uganda is the fifth highest producer of cocoa beans on the continent and 14th globally. In 2018, Uganda exported about $65 million worth of cocoa. The top 5 destinations for Uganda's cocoa are Indonesia, Malaysia, India, Netherlands, and Italy. There's been a strong shift over the last decade towards Asia due to the increasing demand of non-traditional consumer countries. Now, there's a challenge that we exporters face within Africa is, for example, I have a chocolate company that I supply in South Africa, and what we have is we have a problem of standards in terms of the phytosanitary standards. And I think the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement will help to form a unified standard concerning sanitation, which will help ease our access to markets such as South Africa. Another challenge also that face is trade finance. And I think with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, we need some sort of financing policies to be set up, because otherwise what will happen is that the sector will continue to be dominated by European companies setting up and exporting the product. Yet ideally, if we have financing available on the continent, we can be able to determine which route we decide to focus on. Another thing that needs to be looked at, another complementary policy that should be established is a compliance standard in terms of the ecosystem, that covers the ecosystem, production, processing, and marketing, making sure that all products meet the standards from Uganda. Because as it stands now, we rely so heavily on UTZ and Rainforest Alliance for certification, which is expensive and is a barrier to entry into the Western markets. And yet, surely on the continent we can develop our own standards that address all these issues in terms of labor conditions, in terms of the environment, in terms of the fair price paid to farmers. Another thing that the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement can do is to break down the tariffs that make it uncompetitive for a supplier from Uganda to supply a market, say in Egypt or South Africa, because we are both faced with similar tariffs or even higher tariffs to enter a market which is within the continent. And such a decision would help to make it more competitive would actually induce manufacturers in hubs such as Egypt and South Africa to import their intermediary inputs from countries like Uganda. in terms of compliance standards, I noted that there was an adoption by the African Ministerial Conference of the Ecosystems-Based Adaptation for Food Security Assembly Policy of the UN Environment that is creating a step forward towards creating an open market across the continent for healthy, high quality, and environmentally friendly agro produce across the continent. This should be implemented under the Continental Free Trade Area.
One door, please.
How much time do I have left?
Just a minute to go. You have a minute left.
Just a minute to go. Okay, thank you. So all in all, with regards to Uganda, I think our focus, we cannot compete with West Africa in terms of production, but what we can do is be a specialized country, focus on producing quality intermediary in the medium term, focus on producing quality intermediary products to supply the manufacturing hubs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Okello. And it's nice to get the perspectives from across Africa. I like your own positioning that you cannot compete with West African nations in terms of production. So you're going to focus on value addition and therefore move up the value chain, which obviously it's a very laudable position to be. He also spoke about the advantages of having a continental free trade area, and obviously Ahmad on the need to have standards across Africa. Obviously, he mentioned the whole issue of financing, which is probably applicable to almost everybody in that industry. So, Mr. Okello, thank you very much. I guess you'll also be around to take questions as a participant in the industry. So we move on. We will leave Africa and we'll move across now to Europe, where I have Clive Martyr, who will be speaking to us on his experience on a summary of award-winning chocolate with Africa origin beans and the importance of understanding the value of information, what that does to the origin of beans from Africa. Clive began his career in 1995 with the international law firm Hogan Lovells, based in Brussels, specializing in European Union regulatory law, with a particular focus on the chocolate confectionery and wider food industry. He advised clients on EU-wide basis on matters of product labeling and claims, traceability, etc. He moved to the industry in 2001, where he worked as senior European international legal roles for Kraft Foods and Eti-Oni Miller before joining Bello Corporation, which is the world's largest aluminum packaging manufacturer, in 2012 as vice president based in Zurich. He subsequently was appointed to run this Middle East and Asia and Africa region for 6 months prior to his acquisition. Parallel to working professionally in and for the food and drink industry, he developed a passion for fine chocolate, where he spent 15 years developing his knowledge of cacao and chocolate, including attending practical courses on chocolate making, product development, and marketing. Since 2009, Clive has been a member of the Academy of Chocolate, serving as a board member and grand jury judge from 2011 onwards. The Academy of Chocolate is a non-for-profit organization, was established in 2004 to promote fine chocolate. As part of its activities, it organizes and runs the longest established international awards for fine chocolate. The 2019 edition saw over 1,600 product entries from nearly 50 countries. So you're most welcome, Clive, who will be sharing his own thoughts on the award-winning chocolate from Africa origin cocoa beans and its importance to understanding the value of information, a new dimension. Thank you very much. You're most welcome. You have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed for that, and it's an honor to be able to speak to everyone here today. as moderator has just said, the Academy of Chocolate is the longest established organization that deals with awards for the fine chocolate market. Established 15 years ago, and only 15 years ago, there was still remarkably little known about the top end of the chocolate market. That growth, though, over the last 15 years has been exponential. The first year that the Academy held awards, which was in 2005, there were 20 entries from 4 countries in one category. And to have gone from that to 1,600 product entries last year is quite astonishing. Now, as you can imagine, the predominance of awards, particularly in the early years, were from chocolates with cacao origin from Latin America, South America. But this has changed, and I took it upon myself to look into this because I was talking to an Africa conference a couple of years ago, and I went through all of the results over the last 15 years to actually see what had happened to Africa origin chocolate. Now, back in the early days, there were no awards at all to products that had African origin cacao. The first time the gold award went to a product was back in 2009, and that was to an American company called Amano, who was a very well-known fine chocolate maker, using a Madagascan chocolate. It wasn't until 2011 that we had the first non-Madagascan medals, in that year going to Tanzania and Ghana. Particularly in the last 5 years, there's been a big increase in the number of medals going to African origin cacao. So back in 2011, for example, there were only 5 awards in total out of all the entries that went to chocolates with African origin cacao. But by 2016, that had gone up to 24. And by last year, it was at 42. Now, I will say that the majority of these are still at silver and bronze level. The gold level tends to vary somewhat. But in total, we have seen now 170 awards over the last 15 years going to products with African origin cacao, 26 golds, 57 silver, and 77 bronze. The trend is upwards. This year might be a blip because obviously our awards have been severely affected by COVID. We are back doing the awards at the moment, but it's hard to tell how that will have impacted in terms of product entries. But I predict that this increase in African origin beans in our award-winning products will continue. There's certainly an enormous opportunity there, and there's absolutely no reason whatsoever why beans of African origin should not be up there with the top around the world. You only need to look at the wine market. If you go back 40, 50 years ago, the general assumption around the world was that all the fine wine was grown in France. Well, France still does make very fine wine, but so do many other countries around the world at absolutely top level. If you have the territory that is able to grow wine, if you have the territory that is able to grow cacao, you can produce fine cacao. And because the fine chocolate market is still a relatively new one, there is a great opportunity to be able to come into it without the disadvantages of hundreds of years of being behind the game. So I think there's a good opportunity. And of course, it's much higher value for the people who are actually involved. And the one thing I would say here is that of all the awards going to African origin products, only one so far has gone actually to a company in Africa producing its own cacao, and that's that's Chocolat Madagascar, who actually won not only a gold medal in 2017, but actually won our Golden Bean, which is our overall champion of show, for incredibly 100% cacao bar, which is fantastic. But again, only one company that's actually based in Africa. And I think that's where the real opportunity is going to come, because actually that is where the value added is for the businesses. As a point that was actually made earlier on by one of the speakers. So if you're looking briefly at the facts and figures, there have been 7 countries in Africa that have produced beans that have gone on to win awards. Madagascar is by far and away the leading with 118, of which 23 gold. Tanzania is second, and it's a strong second with 38, and it's had 2 golds, 12 silver and 24 bronze. Sao Tome has had 2, one of which has been a gold. Ghana has had 8, 2 silver and 2 bronze. Ivory Coast has had 2, a silver and a bronze. Nigeria, 1 silver, and Uganda, 1 silver. Now, in terms of the companies that have used these products, 16 companies have won gold medals using African origin beans. And these are all, to be honest with you, in the fine chocolate business, these are well-known, highly respected businesses like Ackerson's in the UK, Amadei in Italy, Michel Cluzel in France, Barra Chocolat in the USA. And in fact, these 16 companies came from 9 different countries, just to show you how they esteem the beans that they're actually getting. So the countries that have actually won gold medals using African origin come from the UK, Canada, Madagascar, USA, Norway, Italy, Czech Republic, France, and Japan. Now, I think that's just shows you that when people do actually use top quality African cacao, they can do great things with it. It's just a question of, I think, perception a lot of the time. Because African cacao has been seen as the bulk producer, and obviously there's nothing wrong at all in being a bulk producer of cacao. We in the Academy of Chocolate feel that actually chocolate itself is underrated as a product. I think it's one of the issues compared to, say, the wine market, is that particularly in Europe and the United States, chocolate has been seen as almost a staple product. So the public doesn't really understand the complexity involved in making cacao. And it's used to paying a very low price for all levels of cacao. And I think that is something that the constant publicity, promotion, getting the message out there about cacao in general, and particularly fine cacao, will help raising public perceptions and ultimately help to increase prices. Because at the end of the day, if people don't get paid a fair price in producing cacao, then there is ultimately no market there. And we want people to do well. That is a part of our remit in the Academy of Chocolate. Not only do we like fine chocolate, but we would like to see better chocolate across the entire market, which includes transparency of sourcing of beans and obviously fair earning for the farmers who produce it. I mean, to be honest, very, very few people who buy chocolate in a supermarket understand how little of the price they're paying actually goes to the producers. And that's despite the best efforts of people like ourselves. But I think everybody involved in the market and those countries who are producing, I think, needs to probably continue to step up to get that message across, because it's a very fine product, gives a lot of pleasure to people, and there's definitely money to be made in it. The problem is, in the past, a lot of that money has been made outside the areas where the product is grown. So one of the things the Academy would like to see is more money going to the people who actually produce cacao. And so I think my message is that African cacao has every opportunity to be as good as anywhere else. The idea that, for example, that Forastero beans are somehow not as good as, I think that has been exploded over the years as a myth. We used to be seen as there being Criollo beans being the finest, Trinitario, and then Forastero. But the genetics of cacao were very little understood. And now we are understanding due to research that, for example, there are probably at least 8 different varieties of Forastero, all of which have different qualities, all of which that can be grown down in different parts around the world. So I don't think the type of bean in itself is an issue. It's really down to determination, interest, and enthusiasm as much as anything else. So I think the message is for African cacao, keep going at it. We're always delighted at the Academy of Chocolate when we see beans coming from Africa that have done well. We'd like to encourage people to enter the awards. You know, it can make a big difference to people's businesses if they actually win. And yeah, we're enthusiasts, and we like to promote fine chocolate. So the more we can get from Africa, the better. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you very much, Clive. That's a different perspective. When you go for cocoa shows, you tend to hear more from the producers. I think it's also good to see the ultimate in everything that you do. End of the day, when you do a film, the whole area of producing a film is to win an Oscar. So in this particular case, if you're into cocoa, how do you get your beans now to be winning awards? Clive gave us the history of the awards and also the fact that we have an increase in awards to beans of African origin. There have been exponential growth between last 10 years, from 2011 to 2019. And quite a number of African countries have been winning awards, even though it appears Madagascar is the one to chase after. I mean, also noted that European and global companies are winning awards with beans of African origin. So what that tells you is that the key is how do we also now get more involved in the value addition, because the type of the bean is not the issue, because the quality is good, because other companies that utilize our beans are winning the awards. And I think he also ended by saying that we must change the perception of chocolate. How do people perceive chocolate? We must equate it to the perception of wine. And again, how do we tilt more of the monetary value to the raw material producers rather than the marketers? So thank you very much, Clive. I am also assuming you'll be with us to take questions along those lines. So we left the African continent, we went to Europe, so it's time to come back home. And in coming back home, we will be talking to Princess Odiakosa. Princess will be speaking to us from Lagos, and she'll be talking on preferring solutions to the challenges faced by African artisan chocolate makers. Princess is a Nigerian bean-to-bar chocolate maker, interesting, and an enthusiast. She has a deep passion for making chocolates using only the finest Nigerian cocoa beans and ingredients. Our mission is to share a passion for Nigerian cocoa with our country and the world. Princess Odiakosa, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you so much, Abimbola. I really appreciate this. And thank you everyone for having me. It's really exciting to be here, although it's virtual now, but it was more interesting when we, go to Osun State and, going to the square every day and being part of the festival, the culture, meeting with the farmers. So it's always been a beautiful experience, but it's also wonderful to see everybody here and we all sharing our love and passion for chocolate and cocoa. So I think I would like to start by saying that Clive has made my speaking very easy this morning, because he's mentioned a lot of things that I wanted to even speak about. So like being a chocolate maker in Nigeria, in Africa, why I started doing this was to change the picture, because every time you see the picture of cocoa and Nigeria or Africa, there is always this photo of a farmer with his, his hands in cap, like always helpless. And I just felt like we have this cocoa, people are making this chocolate. Why can't we help ourselves? So that's where the story changed. I wanted to create a new dimension in that picture, put some coloring into it, and then, give the picture like pages. So that's why I started producing chocolate. And then it's a wonderful thing to say that we are taking charge of our story in Africa, not to just be, cocoa producers, but doing something about our chocolate. Like Clive mentioned, every time I look at wine, because I also love drinking wine, I have like different wines from different countries that I enjoy. There are some times I want to like maybe drink exclusively South African, but there are times that you cannot deny the urge to, go for like a French wine or a Riesling. But that's the beauty of life, having the variety, being able to want to try something. So being a chocolate maker in Africa is we as Africans, what we're giving to the world of chocolate. Like I said, creating this beauty around the world of chocolate. Now, it's not it's very easy for us to say, all right, the world should accept our chocolate and everything, but then we have the problems that is internal problems, like they'll always say charity begins at home. Now we have the first things that we have to deal with. You may think maybe it's the farmers or, you know, transporting this from the farm to our factories, but really we even pay as much as what people that would export, you know, the farmers exporting this being the same price at which they will export, that's the same price we acquire this cocoa. So every time I talk to my farmer, he's always talking about the price of the dollar. So it's based on the price of the dollar that I would purchase my chocolate and my cocoa to produce and refine into chocolate. So now and again, the agencies don't understand, you know, craft chocolate making or artisan chocolate making. You know, we are always being labeled, and the classification of what artisan or craft chocolate is about is, you know, they are basing our production and our ingredients based on, you know, what we will call confectionaries. So we are not confectionery makers of chocolate. We are real fine chocolate makers. I know that there was a colleague of mine that presented her dark milk chocolate, and it was denied to be labeled as dark milk chocolate. You know, they told her that there's not a thing, there's no such thing as a dark milk chocolate. But the world has evolved. I mean, people are doing a lot of crazy things with chocolate now. We are seeing that this food is not just, you know, something that a pleasure, dessert or snack. It's something that people sit to enjoy, just like a glass of wine. You know, you take it in, and it also evokes the same thing as nostalgia and happiness and even love. So, like I think we as Africans, because they're people, we've got presidents, we've got people that have been doing this hundreds of years. So I don't think we should be shy to, you know, reach out to maybe like the Academy of Chocolate to, you know, educate us more on labeling, you know, especially our agencies in Nigeria and in Africa, on how to label our chocolate and how it's become so diverse. Because now we're not only talking about what goes into the chocolate, the craftsmanship of the chocolate maker goes into the chocolate. So people are creating their identity via their chocolate. Because I remember I attended the chocolate market in the canopy market, the chocolate canopy market in London. And it was wonderful, because from the beginning to the end of the market, all I did at first was to taste. I tasted everything, and it was wonderful. I knew where I was going to put my money. And I got this very tiny bar. It was this small, but it was £5. But what I bought wasn't just buying this little bar of chocolate. I was buying the craftsmanship of this maker. It was exquisite. It was delicious. It was something like I'd never tasted before. So this man, you know, it's not just about the cocoa beans and the cocoa butter that went into it. It's about his art. So that's what it has become. So we need to understand that chocolate has gone beyond milk chocolate, white chocolate, and tons of sugar. You know, I tell people that artisan chocolate makers are conscious chocolate makers, because we think about what we're putting into our bodies and what we're sharing with the world and what they're putting into their bodies. You know, I don't know about everyone else, but I want people to enjoy chocolate. I want people to enjoy it and people to see that, wow, this is something from Africa. And you know, take away that bitterness and that ugliness, you know, that picture that Africa is popularly depicted as, you know, people that are in need and people that want to collect. You know, we want to give the world our chocolate now. So it's wonderful, like even hearing from Uganda and even hearing about the awards, I would have to say I was oblivious to these things. So I am so delighted and elated that African, although maybe not African makers, but I know that one you mentioned, Clive mentioned one from Ghana. So that's exciting news that we are doing that, because this generation, we have decided that we want to take charge of our future. We want to take charge of our story. You know, gone are the days where we just sit back and allow everybody in the world create everything for us. Now we say, okay, we've got two hands, you know, let us start to create. So we also, there is a process even for Africans as well, because it's just like a child. I would like to use this analogy of a child being born by maybe a cocaine addict mother. And once the child is born, tiny micro doses of cocaine would have to be administered to the baby to wean the child off the cocaine before the baby can function as a full, you know, like a full baby. If not, the baby will cry itself to death. So it's almost a case in Africa now, because we are used to what is called, the confectionery called chocolate, but is loaded with tons of sugar. And, you know, they use these palm oils and nuts and, you know, whatever ingredients just to, you know, make it look like a chocolate. But the truth is that it's just a sprinkling of cocoa in these bars. That is not really chocolate. So now we're taking people through that winning process, you know, a gentle win to discover, you know, find chocolate and, you know, giving our chocolate a voice, you know, and trying to find a place where we can contribute to the world of chocolate. And then the first thing is us appreciating ourselves and understanding, like, sometimes when people price my chocolate, like I tell them, okay, this is the price of my chocolate. And they're like, oh my God, it's so expensive. In the shops, this fine chocolate or that's, you know, other fine chocolate, you know, from Belgium or from another country, it's like half the price. Why is your chocolate expensive, but it's locally made? You know, they think maybe when you are making chocolate, you're dancing with your wand and your spatula and it's all pretty, but they need to see me making this chocolate. And the times where my grinder decides that I'm not going to move today, and you're like, you think your world is coming to an end. You know, it's crazy. And again, we have to deal with electricity problems in Nigeria. You know, I don't know other places in Africa. I think they have to deal with those things. So yeah, even the weather, but the weather I have seen as an advantage, because there was a friend of mine in the UK that makes chocolate, and during the summer, you know, she was complaining about the heat and everything. I said, this is my chocolate making experience every day. And I had to give her a method on how to, you know, make chocolate, you know, in the summertime. And it's been smooth sailing for her since then. So it's something that is wonderful that we can contribute to the world. But we have to understand that there's so many limitations. Even we would say to ourselves, we are not good enough. I've been told that, oh, your chocolate doesn't taste like this or the chocolate. And I'm like, exactly, I'm not meant to taste like them. I'm meant to taste like a Nigerian chocolate. This is me being true to the bar. We were true to our cocoa, you know. Like Clive said, you know, sometimes before I used to feel, there was this feeling of, I used to feel like our cocoa wasn't good enough. You know, I had this feeling like you hear that the Criollo is the Rolls Royce of cocoa. And then I said to myself, but why is it that we appreciate the people that will tell you that they love Ethiopian coffee, and some people don't, but there's some people that love Kenyan coffee, that there's some people that will kill for Arabic coffee. But that's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of having variety. There is somebody out there that wants that chocolate. So we need to appreciate ourselves. We need to make it easy for us, or let me say easier, because we are doing so much locally produced chocolate. We are doing so much, trying our best to push our products, not just to Africa, but to the world. And it's a wonderful thing to hear that, you know, awards are being won. So we're fighting this fight, not just for Africa, but for our beans, for Estero, you know, and the deliciousness of it. And, you know, so it's a wonderful thing if not only the agencies in Nigeria, or wherever in the world, can understand that we want to make this change. We want to make our world better in Africa for Africans, where we can enjoy our chocolate, where we can share our chocolate with the world. So that's I would say limitations, but you know, overall it has been a very satisfying experience for me as a chocolate maker in Nigeria, just to see that change and be part of that change. And then all other chocolate makers in Nigeria, we're all doing wonderful things. You know, I see people in Ghana, you know, it's so amazing what they're doing now and how far they've taken this. You know, I would love to taste the chocolate in Togo. So we as Africa, we need to unite. We need to, you know, our strength is in our diversity, because if we're so colorful and we are so rich that we don't know. That is why I used the name Kalabari Gecko. Kalabari Gecko is a very tiny tribe in Nigeria, but I use this tiny tribe to describe Nigeria because it's not just about a huge tribe in Nigeria. This is the tiniest part of Nigeria describing the entire Nigeria. So all of us have our own parts to play in telling our African story, which
Thank you.
Forever, I know. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Princess Diakosa. Your enthusiasm and your passion is quite infectious, I must say, and I must thank you very much. I will never look at a bar of chocolate the same way anymore. I'm supposed to have the feeling of nostalgia, feeling of happiness, and a feeling of love. Those are the attributes you must be having. I really must thank you. And I learned also something that fine chocolate is different from confectionery, which is just sugar with sprinkle of cocoa on top of it. Clearly now I know the difference. So thank you very much. It's about changing perception and bringing new dimension to chocolate. And I also like your mission also to retain value in the country. You will pay international prices for the cocoa being produced, so people don't have to export. Instead, we can create a value here in Nigeria. So thank you very much. We must move on at this stage, and I have the pleasure in bringing in our special guest. Initially, it was meant to give us an opening speech, but I'm quite pleased that we have Mr. Abba Bello in the house.
Bimbo, can I interject? He's not ready.
Oh, I see.
Connect by his phone, so we should just move straight to the next.
Oh, okay, no problem. So if that's the case, what we'll do is to go to Ghana. We will move to Ghana. I hope we have Nana Aduna II, royalty to royalty. I'm moving from a princess to another royal figure. So we are going to have Nana Aduna II. I'll be speaking to us from Ghana on optimization of opportunities within the cocoa industry. He is a traditional head of the Agona clan and the Udwamako family. He's a 21st century cocoa farmer and a consultant in the cocoa industry. He is a proponent for cocoa value addition, improved farming methods, and farmer empowerment. Nana is the founder, CEO of My Cocoa Group, co-founder of New York Cocoa Foundation, the African Cocoa and Chocolate Expo, and the Golden Pod Emporium in Ghana. He comes from a family with a proud tradition of cocoa farming of over 100 years, and as a landowner and family custodian, Nana became actively involved in cocoa farming himself in 2003, managing the phased active rehabilitation of a number of cocoa farms in eastern region of Ghana, which has been affected by swollen shoot disease. Now up to 82 acres in size and populated healthy, productive cocoa at varying stages of growth. His cocoa farmlands are now in a vibrant, high-yielding rural expanse. In 2018, he bought the Ohene Cocoa brand and launched a range of value-added products, including cocoa nibs, cocoa crunch, cocoa husk, tea, cocoa soaps, to name a few. He co-founded the New York Cocoa Foundation in 2019 and successfully organized the very first Africa Cocoa and Chocolate Expo in Accra, Ghana. He's a member of the Cocoa Value Addition Association of Ghana, the African Cocoa Platform, and the Cocoa Board Committee on Cocoa Value Addition. He's a consultant psychiatrist trained in the winelands of Stellenbosch in South Africa, and his experience in sampling wines and vineyards in South Africa influenced his decision to venture into cocoa ecotourism. He brings his unique insight as a trained physician with significant experience in the pharmaceutical industry to the health-related aspects of cocoa, and has recently co-authored a concept document investigating the use of cocoa as a healthy option and supplement in the management of COVID. To listen to an entrepreneur, I think he gave a different perspective from what we've heard to date. He has invested significantly in the cocoa value chain. And I think it was based on his experience in South Africa. And I like the diversity of income streams that he spoke about. They've gone into the cocoa needs, cocoa crunch, using the cocoa beans locally, went into best cosmetics. They have a beverage line. And now he's only show of ecotourism. I think it's quite key to show what can be done, especially if we can retain value in country. So I must thank His Excellency for sharing those perspectives, or more of His Majesty at this rate. I can see he's a traditional ruler. So thank you very much. I think at this stage, I can confirm that we have our guest speaker in the house, I hope. So we can bring him now on, and that is to bring in Abba Bello, the MD of Nigerian Export-Import Bank, NEXIM Bank. Just give a brief background. He was a pioneer managing director CEO of UBA subsidiaries in Republic of Chad and Zambia, and before he became an executive director at Unity Bank, from where he was appointed by the President Muhammadu Buhari as managing director and chief executive of the Nigeria Export-Import Bank in April 2017. Under his watch, the bank has maintained a steady growth in its balance sheet to 117 billion naira in 2018, nearly double the 61 billion recorded in 2016, with a projected target of 190 billion by 2019. I think that's not passed. The bank has concentrated on financing businesses in key non-oil sectors of the economy, such as manufacturing, agro-processing, including agricultural commodities like cocoa, cashew, sesame seed, gum arabic, and leather products. NEXIM, under Mr. Abubakar Bello, has been in the forefront of the campaign for the development of the SME sector. Nothing best attests to this fact than the bank's collaboration with its partners to push for speedy passage of the Nigerian factory bill that will promote SMEs in the country. The bank is also facilitating the establishment of a shipping company through the Sinlai project. The project is aimed to providing maritime links between West and African countries and is expected to facilitate shipment of over 30 million tons of solid minerals valued at over $1.8 billion annually. So given his Pan-African experience, I think we are quite pleased to have no other person than Lady Abubakar Bello, the managing director of NEXIM, to share his thoughts on understanding financing policies for import and export in an African continental free trade agreement regime. You are most welcome, sir. You have the floor.
Well, thank you very much for being patient with me. I must apologize as the special guest. I think I should have been here from the beginning of the program. But the good thing with virtual meetings is that you can do two things at the same time. I had visitors from Exim Bank of Taiwan, sorry. And I had to meet with them. It's so unfortunate I couldn't 100% be here. But what I did was I put on the meeting on my phone, and very low volume, I was hearing much of what was happening. So I hope I'm forgiven for being late. But let me quickly thank His Royal Highness, Abba Dokun Thompson, who has, this is, I think, the third time that he has invited me to this conference and this festival. While NEXIM was present in the last two, I personally could not make it, given that I had a lot of travels to do that. Now, it's an honor for me to be here as guest of honor today. So thank you very much, Your Royal Highness. Let me start by expressing dismay about the situation of cocoa production in Africa, not only Nigeria. where 75% of global cocoa is produced in Africa, specifically West Africa, and only about 10% of the annual global cocoa revenues come to Africa. And it is estimated that $130 billion worth of cocoa trade is done globally. And Africa, I think, does less than $10 billion. Now, my job as a banker, development banker, is to ensure that there is change to this situation. And what kind of change are we talking about? That Africa gets more value for what it produces in the global industry. I'm not an expert like Princess or Clive or His Highness Yao in knowing the what to produce. I only know basic chocolates and some of the exotic chocolates that are produced in Belgium, but I'm not an expert in cosmetics, in drinks. But what I know to do is to help finance from end to end in the value chains of various products that we export out of Africa. Now, I say this is with dismay. What happens is that while there are small and medium producers of chocolate or other cocoa products in Africa, they do not make an impact on the value and revenues that are derived from Africa. And part of my responsibility as a development finance institution is to ensure that we do that. Now, today, I think 95% of cocoa produced is exported as beans, okay? And that makes us in Africa to be at the very bottom of the value chain. So we're out of freight, we're out of processing, we're out of marketing and also advertising. And that does not bode well for Africa, and indeed job creation and value that comes in foreign exchange. To come back home in Nigeria, 95% also of foreign revenue comes from export of oil. Especially with us going into recession now, again, there is the urgent need for us to diversify into other products that will yield foreign exchange for the country. Now, we have always identified that, but we have not built enough capacity to ensure that other products produce enough to cushion any effects on oil industry fluctuations. Now, NEXIM has identified cocoa as the leading non-oil export product. In its 25 years or 27 years of existence, NEXIM has financed so much processing capacity within Nigeria. And I think there are close to 200 transactions, including processing facilities that we have financed over our history, moving cocoa production capacity from 20,000 metric tons per annum to over 150,000. But again, the dismaying fact is that all this capacity is almost idle, okay? Today we have very low productivity, doing perhaps less than the 20,000 that we met. And all the equipment have now aged. Our farms are aging. Our production is ineffective. And we are doing a lot. We're trying to do a lot to change that. Part of which is how we can revamp these aging plantations, retool the existing processing plants, and even upgrade those that are in the sector as traders into processors. So we have been in a partnership with AfCFTA in providing a $1 billion fund under a program that is called the NATIPS program, which is to support Africa Continental Free Trade. what we are trying to do is to create a regional and continental value chain. I heard earlier where I think it's the gentleman from Uganda who says his major challenge, or the major challenge of the sector in Uganda, is in finance. I think it's beyond finance, though finance is the foundation of all the problems. But we need to ensure certification. We need to ensure single sourcing, as His Royal Highness Yao said. There are standards that we must keep. But finance is the base of all this. So what we are doing with AfCFTA is to provide this $1 billion to facilitate everything within the value chain that needs to make Africa more competitive in the global value chain for cocoa. Now, what is this facility going to provide? It provides very low interest rates. It provides very long-term financing, and it also provides the opportunity for us to grow and better our facilities in certification, in logistics, and so on and so forth. I think the moderator has mentioned what efforts we're trying to do to put C-Link in place. We're doing other things beyond that to create multimodal transportation systems which are lacking in Africa and increase the cost of production for African exporters. Specifically for cocoa, it is the largest non-oil product that we export out of Nigeria, and we need to grow in volume as well as value that we can add to that. So for us at NEXIM, we have those facilities in place even before the AfCFTA supported facilities. From our own position today, I think about 30% of our books, our portfolio is in lending to cocoa. But unfortunately, again, as I always mention, most of it is in trading in beans. And for us to be competitive, we need to move up the global value chain. So while I'm here, while I'm learning from the practitioners, people who are already doing it, I'm also trying to see how we can encourage people like Princess, His Royal Highness Yao, to move into global commercialization of their produce. I think we're still doing so little at the end of the value chain that it does not really have any impact in our local economies, and we need to do better. So I am here from now till the end to see how we can better ourselves with knowledge on how we can support this sector very, very well. Let me use this opportunity. Can you help me warm it? Let me use this opportunity to thank Kabesi again, and it's an experience that we need to do more of. And like Yao said, more expositions of what we can do with cocoa within Africa, and for all of us to attend so that we gain better knowledge and on how we can better value in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And when you're the special guest, anytime you come on is the correct time to come on. So as far as we are concerned, you are not late. That is the appointed time. And we thank you for a wonderful speech that probably stated some of the issues that we're very well aware. I mean, restating the disappointment with the cocoa industry on not creating more value in situ in country, I think is obvious. 10% of cocoa value addition is in Africa, and we are exporting 90%. And I think you make that point. You might be aware. I have a background also in development finance, and I always tell people sometimes money is not the issue. Money is not the issue. Sometimes it is the issue of certification, quality standard, and some other areas, logistics, access to market, that are probably the issue. So I thank you very much. And I also appreciate your staying till the end. I am sure there will be questions, think and fast. Anytime we have people with finance background turning up on programs, everybody will have questions to ask because it's always different as if access to money is the issue. So we will move on. We'll move across Nigeria now. I think now it's time to go. We went Ghana, Nigeria. Now let's further moving to the east. It's time now to go to Cameroon. And I will be speaking to Sylvanus Nekenja, who will be joining us from Cameroon. We'll be speaking on challenges faced by cocoa farming organizations and how to address them. He holds a BSc in project management from Atlantic University, International University in Honolulu, Hawaii in US. And after 5 years with the National Produce Marketing in Douala, Cameroon, in the Department of Cost Analysis and Stabilization in Cocoa Production and Marketing, he went into private consultancy with farmer cooperatives in the North and Southwest regions of Cameroon. And some cocoa beans exported based in Douala between the years 1990 to 1998. In 2005, he initiated the creation of the African Cocoa and Coffee Marketing Organization, a non-profit making with main mission to provide agribusiness support services to smallholders, agri-commodity producers schemes. Since then, he has remained at the head of organizing and driving a success in different local and regional programs and project implementation. In 2010, with the Chamber of Agriculture office in Yaoundé, he organized a roundtable conference on commodity-based trade and finance funded by the World Bank local branch, insurance companies, banks, and other MFIs and other commodity value chain stakeholders. So you are most welcome, Mr. Nekenja, who will be speaking to us on challenges faced by cocoa farming organizations and how to address them. So you are most welcome. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. As a matter of fact, I will first of all like to thank His Honorable Abba Dokun for bringing me on board. We met on LinkedIn, and since then we've been working together at all his concepts and vision. And so I was very delighted when he introduced me and wanted me to present on this challenges facing cocoa farming organization and how to address them. We talked on the theme, and we need some few arrangements. And so let me go straight to the presentation. My presentation will start with the introduction on how these problems itself emanated and how cooperatives are being managed in Cameroon. I'm talking within the Cameroon context, and also how the way forward, how do we remedy this situation, and how it affects policy making. And so the problem with cocoa production and marketing in Cameroon started as far back as the late 80s, 90s, when liberalization of the cocoa sector and the closure of the buffer stock in Holland was put down. It gave the government no more powers over the control of cocoa production and marketing. And so most of its institutions were closed down. And this left the farmers with this brunt of responsibility, which initiated for the creation of the African Cocoa and Coffee Farmers Organization. This organization, however, brings together cooperatives, microfinances, institutions, input suppliers, and an advisory give also advice to government policy making and how to improve cocoa production, how to improve cocoa quality, and so on. And so we have been working all along with government arms and also international organizations. However, let me give some few definition which would give more meaning to my presentation. Farmer Marketing Organization, however, is a social enterprise that operates within the framework of providing farm management, organization management, crop management, marketing, finance, and input, procurement services to members of cooperatives. I want to borrow a definition from an expert, Alex Valdeva Bonaventura, who described a cooperative society as a private stock for profit, corporation organized and controlled by a credit bank in partnership with small borrowers and producers for the neat but capital-intensive support facilities. Like a venture capitalist, the creditor bank, through time, dilutes and divides the majority control in favor of its partner, the borrower or the producer, the smallholder cocoa producer. As a matter of fact, this definition caught my interest because in the pre-independent, and in particular in West Cameroon, cooperatives were developed based on this concept, where the local or the government at the time had to go into borrowings and to develop cooperative as a machinery for the development of West Cameroon. Basically, agriculture is in fact employs 75% of our population. Farmer organization generally is, like I said earlier, is a social enterprise. It is formed within your farming organization with family setups. The whole village comes in because the village is made of people, and so which are farmers, and they develop and transform this village into sectors. This I'm talking about formation of a cooperative society. In Cameroon, we have almost about 600,000 smallholders farmers. And these farmers are supposed to be in cooperative society to be better managed. But unfortunately, these are the challenges that has made some of this a bit difficult. It begins with the creation of the village farmers group, which is either is formed in sector units or sectors or units. Area cooperatives are also formed within the village, and then you have a provincial or regional or state. In the case of Nigeria, for instance, it could be a state federation of cooperatives, which we call here in Cameroon cooperative union. In the northwest and southwest of Cameroon, we have the Southwest Cooperative Society Union in Kumba, and then we have the Northwest Cooperative Union in Bamenda. The cooperative union are always, it's a constitutional legal machinery used by government to drive rural economic development and state wealth creation. The union invests in infrastructure that enhances the cooperative activities. As a matter of fact, I just heard from Mr. Bello, who spoke about a development banker and development banking. The thing is, what we notice in Africa, or in Cameroon in particular, is that we don't have, since the era of pre-independence, we don't have development bank. And so it's difficult for cooperative societies or rural development to really engage in meaningful development through agriculture, because the source of finance is not there, the source of capacity building is not there. So this provincial or regional cooperatives, they invest in warehouses, infrastructure such as warehouses, they build cooperative stores and marketing equipment. The structures are financed through long-term soft loans and are repaid by the farmers over a period of time. In the 90s, strange forms of farmer organization was introduced in Cameroon, and it was financed by the French Corporation with its head office in Yaoundé. We have sections like the common initiative groups, the federations, and the union of federations. This approach was very unwelcome because it was marred with corruption and mismanagement. The concept was fundamentally, and methodology of the groups were undemocratic. And most of the powers was given to non-elected executives, some who were not even farmers, who came from that area. Most of them failed, and government reverted to transforming this group into cooperative societies. So far, the limitation that we've experienced is that cooperative society and other forms of organization in Cameroon There is this non-respect of fundamental group binding principles. Those are the challenges that we face. Lack of government enabling policy framework, inadequate managerial skills, insufficient structural finance mechanism platform. Well, some will dispute that finance is not the basic problem in cocoa growing and storage, marketing, but it is. It is because if you pump in finance into cocoa and you don't structure it in such a way that you can give an account of what each partner of the cocoa chain is doing, you might find yourself not realizing any substantial objective. And so I personally, in many of my project proposals and even resolutions in some conferences, is to help government put in place a structured finance system, and which I think we could use this in other African countries to better make use of the finance injection into the cocoa mainstream activities. The functional challenges and the way forward, I am trying to just go fast so that we can catch up with time. I had wanted, in fact, to put this on PowerPoint, but it wasn't possible. So we have these challenges, and how do we go forward? And I look at this as we need some policy guidelines. When we talk about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, there's a lot of things that we need to do fundamentally in order to push forward, even to grow the value chain further. There is the issue of the consumption, how to consume transformed product. Princess spoke about specialty chocolate and how prices are expensive. Then we need to diversify. We need to diversify in producing a product that would meet all the market demand. One German friend told me that we were having a chat, and he told me that China is succeeding because it produces a product for all the market. Everybody can have what he wants, depending on what the money you have. So I think we should also look from that perspective in order to gain the market access. Otherwise, we might not sell what we have because people don't have enough money to buy. And so we need a cooperative union bank in order to help farmers work effectively. I think Mr. Bello will call that an investment bank, and I think Mr. Bimbo will also recommend an investment bank or a development bank. But what I'm trying to say here is a clearing house, a house and a cooperative society which serves like a clearing house, because the different activities to produce cocoa, to market cocoa, to transform cocoa needs funding. And this funding needs to be structured so much so that everybody can pay and repay loans, and so finds its own benefit. The Farmers Cooperative Society should be strong enough. Farmer cooperatives should be formed within people with common problems in the same geographical area, seeking common solutions for their problems, not like the common initiatives group or the federations, where you have people coming from the ministry or from government and imposing on people who they don't know their problems. The country laws and regulation must back up the production and marketing of marketing arrangements. The thing is that we have so much dwell in export, and if we want to move into transformation, there are fundamental things that policy reforms that need to be carried on. And to do this, stakeholders must come on board and bring in their own suggestions. Otherwise, we might not go anywhere. I have been attending a lot of meetings and making presentations and suggesting, even at the level of Central African region. But believe me, this thing ends all in papers. And at the end of the day, we are going nowhere. I suppose that the African Continental Free Trade would do something. We am also in the Common Social group in the African Development Bank that the new president has just created. The other day we had a virtual meeting, and I asked when exactly they will take proper action to support farmer, which agriculture is the fundamental of African economy. They said there's no yet any planned action for that. So at times you get discouraged with all of these meetings we hold and nothing is actually happening. And so country laws are also very important, that we analyze them properly and implement them. And well, we also need an independent collateral manager. Well, all along the years, we've been working with collateral managers who are coming from Europe and cannot adapt into our system. In our local project, we had a problem with collateral management, which was so expensive because he asked of an insurance company who was so exorbitant the cost. And I suggested with the local bank, why don't we develop our own system and adapt them, that our farmers, our stakeholders may be interested. So we need something like that. We also have the partners to form a credit credit operations, the farmer cooperatives, society with the right to commit the members in respect of their responsibilities. In this context, I'm talking about joint liability group, the cooperative union bank. These are members or partners of such a program. The input company. Input company does not necessarily mean chemicals. There are other inputs that we need in cocoa production and cocoa marketing. We also have, what are the collaborative technical partners that we need in programs such as developing cooperatives and making them functional. We have the government regulatory board. We need to harmonize this within the African context, because we cannot be working and we want to do things together, maybe export to South Africa or export to, I remember I have friends who left Nigeria and came and bought cocoa from Kumba. So assuming that I were to export to Kumba, to Nigeria, or an intraport trade in Nigeria, you need to harmonize all of this, otherwise I might not be successful in trading with Nigerian partners. And so we also have a credit bureau, which I think capable NGO may also assume that responsibility, regional research institutes or African research institutes, which are recognized, not just in paper, who are recognized. Local capacity builders, like NGOs like AFMO, which is my NGO or our NGO. The program is designed would include the various cooperatives required to provide full details of their activities. In fact, what are we saying here? That cooperative must be well organized and respect the principles and operate within the laws of cooperative management. Program design should also be diligent. There is also this problem of our banks in Cameroon is full of liquidity, but we don't have local experts who can be creative enough to develop small good products that can use this liquidity and push the economy and push cocoa production and cocoa activities. Let me go straight to the legal framework. A tripartite agreement, take for instance, somebody who's...
You have to round up, please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we need a tripartite agreement in order to reduce some of the corruption and misappropriation of funds, and then the time procurement of input storage and so on, the input distribution also. These are all approaches on how to carry out programs that would affect cocoa production and cocoa storage and price stabilization. Supervision of regulatory field report, determination of credit recovery. I said earlier that loans which were given to cooperative societies were paid by farmers themselves. And so there must be a diligent management of all this money and with records and supervision and report given at intervals. In fact, I want to thank you all for listening to me. I suppose I have taken so much time than I ought, but it's because there's a lot that I would have said, because there's a lot. It's a very broad topic, and I hope I have another time to present with PowerPoint, which would, help listeners to get the point straight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Like I said, it's a wide topic. There's a lot to cover, but unfortunately, we must work within the constraints of time. And I'm quite pleased to give us the history of cocoa production in Cameroon and the structure of the industry. Again, the challenges were quite mentioned. You also spoke about what needs to be done in terms of funding and infrastructural challenges, and also logistics that must be in place. And obviously the role of institutions is quite key. I think you mentioned something that is common to almost all the African countries, the fact that implementation is always the issue. Problems have always been well identified, solutions have been preferred, and that's where it ends. We are very good at top jobs, but implementation is the problem. I quite like what you're talking about. It is common to us here in Nigeria, system liquidity, but still, the banking system is extremely liquid, but nobody has access to the money. So I thank you very much for your intervention. And we must move on. This time we will be moving outside Africa, and we intend now to move to Singapore. We've been talking to financiers, we've been talking to producers, people have been in ground now. Let's go across to somebody that is involved in the trading aspect of the business. And it is my pleasure now to invite Mr. Debajoti Bhattacharya. I hope I got his name right, who will be speaking to us from Singapore on the perspective of a commodity trader on the effect of the trade when more cocoa is processed at the farm gate. He is an established commodity trader with expertise in trading nuts, agriculture, and bulk commodities, including cocoa, coffee, and nuts. He has been trading cocoa beans and products from Africa over the past 10 years and successfully launched and expanded the operations of trading groups like Olam, TGI, and Valency. Currently, he is leading the management of CIMAC and West Africa for NutriSource Limited with a mission to providing sustainable, eco-friendly, and inclusive solutions for softs and agro trading. So, Mr. Bhattacharya, you are most welcome. And I must apologize if I am not pronouncing your name correctly. Apologies. Please, you have the floor. And you have just...
Mr. Abimbola, thank you so much. You've pronounced it pretty well, I think. An easier name for me is DJ, and that's how I've been mostly known in West Africa. So first of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dokun and to organize this. This has been a difficult year for everybody. We are all far away from each other, and usually I attend the Eti-Oni seminar. And in fact, the first time that the Eti-Oni festival was conducted, it was my ex-company, which was Wakot, part of the TGI group. We were partners with them. So it's been great looking at the kind of effort that has been made. And I have seen over the last 10, 12 years that I've been trading cocoa from Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Cameroon, that there have been changes. One of these changes is definitely the fact that people have become more aware. As I could see, and I was really impressed by talking to Princess and a few other ladies in the group who are making bean to bar chocolates in Africa. Carry on. Whenever I visit Africa, I try and tend to buy the bars, take them back to Singapore, take them back to our clients all across Europe, all across US, and show them what kind of quality is coming out of the beans, which are so-called mass. There is definitely an aspect of fine flavor cocoa, which we all understand. There are the challenges of financing, there are the challenges of quality, there are the challenges of perception. All of these can be really handled if we partner with a credible authority. We have the Chocolate Academy here, we have traders like ourselves who are here, and we try and not just buy these beans to supply the bigger groups who use them for mass processing, but we try and connect you to people who are actively sourcing for it. For example, you can probably see in the background some of the cocoa bars that I personally used and we have supplied to them. Amadeus was one of our clients. They have been, winners of quite a few awards, and we have been sort of pushing them to start buying African beans as well. And I can tell you that this was the first year that they actually tried some beans from Uganda. There are many other such players who have the opportunities. Can we link them all up in a single trading platform or a single structure? I don't think so right now. It will take some time. But the good thing that will come out is that the regional variances out of the AfCFTA, meaning the production capacities of the Balkan nations, might just be solved if people actually remove the duty, start talking to each other and start pricing each other at a fair advantage game. Imagine a situation where right now Nigerian cocoa beans production is going down with the last few years, and the processing factories, many of you would know, are not doing so well. I have previous companies who have their own processing interests in Nigeria, and they're not being able to fare so well. And the usual complaint is lack of quality beans, two, lack of financing. Yet there are companies who don't have buyers. In Cote d'Ivoire, if you go to a farmer, they'll tell you that they're begging for beef at the prices. Ghana, they're trying to implement together the LID, which is called the Living Income Differential. And the funny thing is, while the bigger chocolate companies claim, and I stand by it, that they would like to pay the premiums, we have just seen in the last 7 days that Hershey's has bought up most of the stock from New York Exchange and taken the market up $400, so that they don't have to pay the $400 LID on buying 2021. There are these challenges. They will not go away. They are the bigger finances. They have to look at making their numbers work. But there are traders. There are people who are invested into the cocoa business. There are individuals. There are organizations who are taking this effort to make sure that African cocoa beans is seen in a different way. And we as a trading company are investing into on a longer term basis. We are looking at helping them in financing their objectives. We are financing bean to bar makers in the African nations who have tie-ups. We go to their plantations, we verify trees, verify what kind of work they need to do. We try and help them securing loans where we ourselves stand guarantee for the production. We try and market their final beans and their bars and try and get them that extra advantage in pricing. And one of the challenges that you guys face, most of the bean to bar manufacturers, is to sell your product. I mean, why we go all the way to Europe to sell? Why do we want to go all the way to invest? And today, if you look at
I think we're having challenges with sound.
It's saying here that his network bandwidth is low.
Yes, yes. Well, I think time is even fast moving against us. We'll see if we can come back to him. So I think it's better if we move on, because let's move on, because we have time challenges, and I think it's better for us to come on. I think our next speaker is going to be Mary Molube Bakia, and she'll be speaking to us from Cameroon on the topic, redefining the role of women in cocoa for better output. She works within the cocoa value chain as a lobbyist and advocacy activist. She coordinates a civil society organization that advocates for women and youth rights and inclusion in the cocoa production chain, as CEO of Cameroon Youth Movement for Citizenship. She said, in as much as there exists unethical exploitation in the production chain, those who are the main actors, especially in the area of labor, are left out of the value chain. That's a profound statement. So she'll be speaking to us about redefining the role of women in cocoa for better output. And please, can you just speak to us for about 5 minutes? 5 minutes. Thank you very much. You're most welcome. Unmute yourself.
Good afternoon.
Go ahead, Mary, we can hear you.
Okay, good afternoon to everybody. It's good afternoon from my end. And I wish to say a huge thank you to the Cocoa Festival team for inviting me once more on board. And all protocol duly respected. I am happy to be once more here to present this little contribution of mine. So a brother of mine already passed and presented a few highlights on Cameroon and Cameroon in terms of cocoa. But I will start by saying Cameroon cocoa is produced in forest areas in Cameroon and is dominated by male smallholder farmers with cocoa plots of less than 3 hectares and an average low yield of 350 kilograms per hectare. The organization of cocoa farmers is very weak, while the rising average age of a cocoa farmer is like 52 years, and this is statistics gotten in 2013. And it is evident that the younger generation, including women, are not taking over the business so strongly. In 2012, the government of Cameroon embarked on a range of initiatives to revitalize the cocoa sector in order to meet the country's ambition for an annual production rate of 600,000 tons of cocoa beans by 2020. This production from 2014 to 15 was only at 205,000 tons, showing a gradual downward trend from the previous years. So it is clear to us that without integrating an additional workforce, notably women and youth, it will be difficult to meet this challenge. And I think talking about women's issues is a cross-cutting theme, and it's not only peculiar to Cameroon. And so this could be something that is felt too in other countries. So the current exclusion of women and youth is largely a matter of barriers related to traditions with respect to farm inheritance, socially assigned roles of men and women in cocoa farming, and the difficulty of access to production resources, including land and credit. I heard a lot about credits with the bankers who were on board. So I think it's a good idea because they're going to also facilitate us in telling us how we could help women get credits that can help them also get involved in the cocoa sector. The sociocultural context of cocoa farming is that of a perennial crop whose operation is linked to land ownership, where land allocation is controlled by the chiefs. The management is controlled by male farmers. And marriage and inheritance in Cameroon specifically is patrilineal. Thus, women are rarely owners of land and at best have on trustful rights, for example, when they become widows. Despite women having a huge role to play in cocoa production, they have little influence in the sector. However, as a woman, having been engaged in the cocoa industry for several years, I can understand that women presently have little to gain in this sector, especially in the area of production and marketing. They produce very little for the few who have the opportunity to own some portions of land or quasi transfer of certain of these portions of land by their husbands. So if we look also at the activity of cocoa breaking, transportation, where the role of the woman is really intense, it is good, no doubt, but very strenuous and less paying. Sometimes it's not even compensated, especially when it comes to family labor, as the men climb the walls with their backs when they finally get paid the cocoa money. So women, besides providing labor for their husband's cocoa plantation, have the role to produce the family food. Their educational level are usually very low, and this acts as a limiting factor for them. They lack a lot of confidence and esteem in themselves and shy away from posts of responsibility when they are called upon to make informed decisions within this cocoa sector that can change the trend of cocoa in future. So we are in our organization where I work, are running a program called the Female Leadership Program. We started running this program from 2013 to 2020. The program aims at helping the cocoa production communities and cocoa cooperatives challenge the existing customs and tradition obstructing the inclusion of women and youth in the cocoa sector. It has also helped, it also has as object to break down some stereotypes about the role of men and women in the cocoa sector and allow access to women and young people in the cocoa production, as a livelihood, thereby making cocoa farming more sustainable. So far we have built the capacities of over 1,500 women in the southwest and central regions of Cameroon with this program. And talking today about redefining the role of women in cocoa for better output, I think we need to start thinking of the formation of what we call now on the field in Cameroon, the next generation of cocoa farmers. And this can be done through activities like preparing the women and the young people to take over more prominent roles at community level, challenging the attitudes towards gender roles and youth in the cocoa farming, and also identify practical solutions to allow women enter into the cocoa value chain. We also need to carry out a lot of education and trainings. Yes, I know in some countries like Ghana, I have visited, I can say a lot is being done already. I don't know for the other countries, but I know it is being done. But we cannot measure that at times when you go really down into the communities, you will find women who cannot read and write, but who are really involved in this sector. They are the backbone of this chain. So I think a lot of education, awareness creation still needs to be done, and the major stakeholders need to take this into consideration if we really want to redefine the role of women. We need to build their capacities to acquire knowledge and build the confidence they need in themselves to change, to make the change they need, like Princess was saying a while ago. She took up the challenge to bring in the change in this sector, in the area of transformation. And I think most of the women are involved in the production sector. We also need to carry out intergenerational dialogues on the position of women in the next generation of cocoa farmers. And to do this, we need to bring all the stakeholders on board, the men, the young people, the mature women, the young girls, the village leaders, and everybody, to discuss the obstacles that are faced by women to go into cocoa farming and how to overcome this. At times when you talk to the men, they will say it's the women. The women will tell you it's the men. So why not bring all of them together to discuss all of this? We need to open up discussion on the question of successions, on how women could invest in their parents' farms. There are some traditions in Cameroon when you go out for marriage and you come back when the marriage doesn't work, you don't have any other possibility to get hold of any farmland. They tell you you have been sold, so you don't have a possibility to get hold of any farmland. So such discussions should be opened up on successions, and they should be written down as policies or laws to facilitate women own farms on which they can work. We need to support also women to take up leadership roles in the cocoa production chain, not only in the area of production, but also in the area of processing. In Cameroon, GIZ, SNV have done a lot in supporting the cocoa producers to go a step ahead in the area of transformation. And I think if these women are encouraged in the area of processing, it will help them add value to the activities they are carrying out within the chain and also act as an income generating activity for them. So we need to provide trainings on processing of cocoa beans to cocoa chocolate, why not butter and powder. They can sell it with it and raise money to help them also acquire their lands, hired lands on which they can produce cocoa. And to conclude, I can say contrary to the paradigm of cocoa farming being looked as a man's activity in Cameroon, and I don't know how it is looked upon elsewhere, the integration of women can quickly contribute to the family income while supporting the objective of most of our ministries to increase the country's cocoa production. Since the equitable access to land by women will not happen overnight, their integration at other levels within the cocoa chain, namely processing, marketing, should be encouraged. Women need to enter into some other production chain. We need to encourage them to enter into some other sectors of the chain. Cocoa production is a sector that continues to be seen as a man's business while the women work on the farms. So I think substantively, a substantive research needs to be done to make women and us all stakeholders understand that women's contribution to the production process is the first step towards improving cocoa production for a better output. So for us to redefine the role of women, I think we need to sit back, because we cannot talk about our policies, our continental trades, when the backbone, those who really support, give a push to all of this production are the women, and they are not taken care of. And somebody said one day that one woman can change everything and many women can change everything. And if we see like today in this conference, I think only Princess and I have spoken as women. So this cocoa production, the cocoa chain is still not very, very open to most of us, the women. So I think in the next conference, if I'm chance to be present, I would like to see more women talking about women's involvement and the role they play and the role they want to play to push forth this sector for it to go sustainable in future. So thank you. That's what I had to contribute today. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. With that different perspective, the world is about diversity. And you're quite right. How do we increase the productivity and output of a nation, of a particular activity, if half the workforce are excluded? So the question is, how do we get more women to be involved? And like you said, a lot has to do with historical perspectives. And I must commend you for the work you're doing with your female leadership program that is trying to fight against existing customs and traditions, obviously trying to break down stereotypes. So I thank you very much, and I'm sure you'll have comments later on. The theme of this program is transforming cocoa industry for impact with focus on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So what that meant was that the AfCFTA agreement is meant to be a key focus. And we earlier on, the paper by Mr. Francis Anatogu, who is a senior special assistant to the president on public affairs and secretary to the Nigerian Action Committee on African Continental Free Trade, AfCFTA. His paper was taken much earlier on by Mr. Chukwu. I'm pleased to announce that Mr. Anatogu himself is in the house, and I'd like to yield for him at this point to just make some additional remarks and comments. Like I said, the theme is around the AfCFTA. So therefore, I think it's good if you have Mr. Anatogu in the house to also give us a different perspective, just for a few minutes. Mr. Anatogu, you're welcome. Is he in the house?
I can't see him.
Oh, you can't see him. Okay, we better move on.
Yes.
We better move on. Okay.
He had network challenges. He's coming back on.
It's coming back on. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Shall we?
Well, we'll have to move. Our time is moving against us.
Maybe we should come back to him.
Okay, we'll come back to Mr. Keller. I hope he's on standby because we are coming straight to you. Maybe we'll come back to Mr. Anatogu, and I think after Mr. Keller, we'll be taking the question and answer. So hopefully Mr. Anatogu will be able to join us there. Okay, Mr. Akinola is an experienced development consultant with broad private sector exposure spanning banking, trade finance, and commodity export-import transactions. With a very strong product development and business advisory skills and driven by passion to mainstream economically talented entrepreneurs, Mr. Akinola has impacted positively through wealth creation projects, capacity building, institutional strengthening, poor market linkages, outgrow schemes, and cultural value chain services, and remains a strong advocate of corporate social responsibility mechanisms. Also is strong about institutionalization of financial, agricultural, and social literacy, school feeding programs, value addition, and domestic consumption of key agricultural products in Nigeria. His 10-year-plus private sector background, enriched by his 22-year pro experience, enabled Ayo to offer unique cross-cutting and holistic and socially inspired products and services. He is organically connected to over 250,000 farmers across several value chains and has been intensely involved in the incubation, capacity, and institutionalization strengthening of several farmer organizations. For the past 2 decades, he has been at the cutting edge of the major developmental initiatives to grow and professionalize the Nigerian cocoa value chain, and has devoted the past 11 years to the Sustainable Smallholder Agribusiness Program of German International Corporation in Nigeria to support the design, implementation, and sustainability pathways of the Farmer Business School intervention. From the almost 100,000 cocoa farmers trained under the FBS protocol, he has led the effort that established the largest cocoa producer organization in Nigeria with potential to provide 40% of the country's output. Through FBS, which is the Farmer Business School, which has reached over 1.4 million producers across 24 value chains and 25 countries, he has become a leading advocate for agri-entrepreneurship and socially inclusive agribusiness in Nigeria. He retired from the German International Corporation in June 2019 and is currently the Nigeria focal point of the GID-led Africa Cocoa Platform Program, and is also an executive director of a budding bean-to-bar premium chocolate factory in Nigeria. You are most welcome. He's speaking to us from Lagos on capacity building and developing next generation cocoa producers. You are most welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm speaking from Ondo State. I had to be on the field today. My presentation comes in 2 slides. The first one is to set the context, to show the enormous opportunities amidst the grave challenges. And the second one just looks at the enabling environment that will allow the younger generation to get into agric. When I saw the agenda, I was wondering why we were last as farmers. You know, farmers are always put down in the cocoa value chain, and it's no surprise to me that that's happening now. But that be that as it may, I'm also proud to say that the chocolate bean that won the award coming from Nigeria, I'm also associated with that project, and hopefully that's the project we're driving to begin to manufacture premium chocolates from Nigeria of single origin. Now, cocoa consumption, African per capita cocoa consumption is about 0.5 kg, and this accounts for about 5% or 7.13 billion imports from the 140 billion global market. At the current population of 1.35, some people say I've heard 1.3 today, average spend is roughly $5.3. According to Food Trending, the CAGR, which is the compounded average annual growth rate of 4.6%. If you look at that projection, that translates to about 14.6 billion, a 14.6 billion marketplace in 2035 at an average spend of $7.70 for the 1.9 billion Africans that will probably be there. But here's the thing, by 2035, majority of the African farmers who are disenfranchised will be in the 65, 70 demographic. And these people, even now, are only consigned to 6.6% of the value chain, yielding a whopping 93.4% value downstream. Could it then be any wonder that the Cocoa Barometer puts the farmer daily wage at an appalling 78 cents a day? That is way below the living wage income. What's still, if you look at the importation of if you look at the importation Africa did in 2019, and you look at the value of the chocolate global market, this translates to 9.3 billion, considering the cocoa mass. And at Africa's 75% contribution to global supply, this is roughly 6.84 billion. Incidentally, this crystallizes in a trade deficit of around $290 million to the 7.13 billion chocolate imports. So here's the thing, we can Africa imports a lot of chocolate, and this is a market that is available for the African chocolate. But at any rate, this is a double jeopardy because the living wage differential narrative remains a pipe dream, and not much has been achieved by the Cote d'Ivoire-Ghana cartel. The most singular concern now is how to justifiably take the impoverished farm gates out of the red and guarantee global supply of cocoa beans in the long term. Despite the emerging African chocolate marketplace, how do we then attract the successor generation that are disenchanted with the sorry state of affairs, lack of access to felt needs and services, the drudgery associated with farming, widespread poverty and insecurity, huge social infrastructural deficits, the tokenism of sustainability and social responsibility projects, and the sustained appeal of the urban centers. This is all amidst the boom bust cycles of the buyer-led pricing regime. And I'll go to the next slide, which looks at the enabling environment. What could be the promise of the Continental Free Trade regime? Before that, what do we have to do to engage the successor generation? To engage them, the ecosystem, cocoa ecosystem needs to be sexy. I use these words not in a derogatory manner, but also just to describe how the younger generation are. It has to be exciting, it has to be appealing, and it has to have end-to-end opportunities and incentives that are driven by economically viable farms. Not the 2.5 smallholder farms, but something that will guarantee enough income. We have to see mechanization. There has to be seamless intermediation and blockchain services. There has to be a zero waste regime, which will encourage the MSMEs and agrotourism, and also including shorter, socially inspired but shorter value chains. The local addition, and then multiple markets, which Yor talked about, His Majesty Yor talked about, comprising a mix of the domestic institutional, that's the school feeding program, or staples, the internally displaced persons, we have a lot of them in Nigeria, the military, public health. Yor also spoke a little about that, preventive health. Cocoa is a very good immune booster to COVID. And then the intracontinental trade, as well as the humanitarian and the traditional export markets. Under the Continental Trade Agreement, producing nations and buying nations should establish a rules of engagement. This should be akin to the global cocoa agenda, where you begin to talk about African standards, certification, what are the practices and stuff like that. And also including an African Cocoa Innovation Fund, targeted at the youth demographic and deployed towards transforming ideas, alternative uses of cocoa into impactful projects, new technologies, and competitive markets. The creation and institutionalization of multiple markets, which we already saw an example from the Ohene company, will ultimately give rise to additional value chains that will be driven by different market conditions and pricing regimes. This will give wider range of opportunities and capacity developing needs for the discerning entrepreneurs. In response to the growing tribe of bean-to-bar chocolaters, and we have many, Madam just spoke about where the women are playing. Women are playing in this area. A lot of women are involved in the bean-to-bar chocolaters. A lot of artisans were seen in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Tanzania, in Uganda, and they're making very exciting cocoa, chocolates. But in response to this, we've begun to see chocolate academies have emerged, just as there are numerous training packages for intermediation services, waste to wealth, beverages, food and personal care products. At the farm gate, a well-rounded agribusiness training package should be delivered for the farmers. It should have integrated household husbandry, good agricultural practices, the farmer business school, the cooperative business school, which my colleague speaker from Cameroon was talking about. He didn't talk about this, but then if you had a protocol like this, it will take care of most of the problems. Financial literacy training, the processor business school. My colleague from Cameroon just spoke about women and and processing. This is a tool, a protocol that enables them to do better at what they do. Outgrower management, B2B appreciation and ICT, and then value chain orientation. These are all and more expected to adequately prepare and equip the successor generation of cocoa farmer entrepreneurs into the long term. In closing, if you don't have an economy that is attractive to the young generation, if it's not sexy, if they don't understand the markets, if there are not multiple markets, it is unlikely that the young generation will get involved in an industry where cocoa farmers are disenfranchised and are living well below the poverty level. It's going to be difficult, and it's going to be a problem in attracting the successor generation. I'm happy that my presentation somewhat looks like a summary of all what I've been heard today. Bottom line, we need to have a diversification of the value chain that will create more opportunities for the younger generation to come to play. There has to be African standard, and we should establish the rules of engagement. With this, I hope I'm within the time limit. I thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
You have done very well, Mr. Akela, and thank you very much. Like you said, you have summarized what has been said.
Yes, what has been said all day.
How do we deal with it? With an industry that is delivering 78 cents a day. How do we attract the next generation to the industry? How do you have an ecosystem that must be exciting, appealing? How do you bring about mechanization, industrialization? How do we bring women to the party? Then most likely, at least, we ended up by preferring solutions and structure that we should attract people to the industry. So thank you very much for that. We are fast rounding up, but before we go to Q&A, I think I'm in a position now to bring on Mr. Anatogu to give us some comments on the program. Is Mr. Anatogu in the house now? I think we had a problem with his connection earlier on. Yes, I can see he's in the house.
Yes, good afternoon, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and my apologies for joining late. I have been in about 3 events at the same time, pretty much. So please, I wasn't ignoring you all. I think for us at the National Action Committee, this is essentially a great event for us, and something we wanted by all means to be part of, because it gets down the message. We may have been talking at the very general level, but this is the Cocoa Association are now taking, being proactive, taking the message and now trying to figure out how will this work for people in the association. So I thank KBSC, I thank you and your team and all the other organizers and the participants here, which I noticed are cut across several African countries. In our work at the National Action Committee, we have actually looked at cocoa a bit. And what we found is that looking at the cocoa bean itself, the opportunity is comparatively limited to when you compare it with products like let's say plastics or sugar or even rice. But when you look at the value chain, you then see that the opportunities are huge. And for us, one of the key messages that I would like to pass on here is to say the AfCFTA provides opportunity for us to extend across the cocoa value chain. We are there at the National Action Committee, and for us, it would be to understand from your perspective areas where help is needed, areas where the government help is needed, areas where we can intervene, be it at a subnational level or anywhere else, to bring people together or to develop some of those things that we need to create that enabling environment or pretty much facilitate trade in cocoa. The besides the export potential, the job creation potential is enormous. And what we found as well is that the investments in some areas of the value chain may not be as prohibitive as one would expect. So it's a matter of looking at the segments carefully. We have looked at the markets, and we are also trying to have an in-depth look at some of the markets to really understand or quantify some of these opportunities. So as we finish with these studies and the results come out, we will be sharing this with you. Thank you very much. If there are questions, I would gladly take them.
Thank you, sir. And I'm quite pleased you're able to join us. Like I said, the program itself has a theme around the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Before we go to Q&A, and I'm pleased to be joining us for that, we left out a speaker who was unable to join us for communication reasons, and that was Mr. Angie Laurent Nane from Ivory Coast. But he has sent us his paper, so it will be my pleasure to invite Yemisi Jenkins, who will probably just give a touch on the issues that he spoke about in his paper. His topic was transforming the cocoa industry for impact, with focus on Africa Continental Free Trade Area. So I do believe that it's still useful for us to get a few insights from the paper he would have delivered. So Yemisi, over to you if you can just please summarize some of the key points he was making in his paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Abimbola. Like you said, I'm just going to go briefly over it because of timing, but just to stick to what he said, because I don't have I'm not an expert when it comes to cocoa. In the global context marked by the cross dynamics of international trade or geopolitics and of the numerous challenges imposed by appearances of recent worldwide virus of COVID-19 in 2020, Africa has found herself today in the necessity to rethink her survival and development strategy by increasing the economic cooperation between its member states through the creation of the implementation of an African Continental Free Trade Area, which was initiated since 2012. Such move is actually supposed to have an impact on the African population and their economies that are heavily dependent on the export of commodities and natural resources, which generally follow the traditional business path inherited since colonization era. Now, he then talks about the creation of the Ivorian Cocoa Cooperative called Scopega Scopes, which envisions to participate in the international market and also work towards the consolidation of all African markets for all the African goods. Then he talks about the opportunities, which ranges from diversification of markets, price leveraging, access to Pan-African and international financing options with affordable interest rates through the support of banks, investors, alternative finances, providers from the continent and beyond. Development of the working capabilities of the cooperative in the production and supply of raw or manufactured cocoa products through knowledge transfer and the development of required facilities. And then he talks about the challenges, which include the absence of on-field legal and regulatory framework to the whole Africa that harmonizes and simplifies the regulations of the international trade business practices led by the continent. The second challenge, the weaknesses of infrastructure and transportation, the competition of non-African trade agreements inherited during colonization era, or of the latest development of globalization, for instance, European-African agreements and emerging countries, Africa agreements, that holds most of African states and businesses in a captive state that hampers their endeavors to engage into an African trade market. According to reports made in 2019, the part of intra-African business exchange between African countries was evaluated at only 16%, while the exchange with Europe and Asia reached 70%. In the wake of such agreements, an advantage is given to non-African multinationals which have the means, finances, logistics, and political influence to source, in the first place, the bulk of available commodities and to become the exclusive buyers of African exporters while excluding at the same time potential African importers to exchange their African businesses. It talks about the difficulty to often reach a commercial agreement, lack of financing of options, the environment and social issues threatening the future of cocoa industry of the cooperative. The COVID-19, as you all know, which has considerably disrupted the world economy and led most of the countries to restrict measures adopted to alleviate the spread of the diseases. And then he talks about strategy, draft of unified legal and regulatory framework that will ease the non-tariff and tariff barriers for export-import operations, the establishment of an African-based official marketplace. African states need to promote strategic intra-African investment and economic partnership by linking African financiers to opportunities arising outside their natural countries. And then he talks about African states in collaboration with the private and public companies must create the infrastructural, environmental, and sanitary conditions of sustainable businesses relationship between the African business actors by building roads, investing in maritime, aerial, and terrestrial fleets, as well as in networks and connectivity, the protection of environment and health system to combat efficiently international viruses to support the international trade operation. And lastly, the cooperative companies such as Scopes needs to modernize deeply their standards and work.
A prime anchor farmers program where farmers can use their agricultural landed properties as collateral to secure Central Bank of Nigeria's funds with very low interest rates, i.e. single digits. He said we have over 10,000 hectares of agricultural land in Okeogun area of Oyo State. So he's asking about them using their land to access credit. Maybe you also use that to probably expatiate on what can be done directly for the private sector or for those.
Okay, sir.
So, sorry, so that's just a question for you. If others have questions, I'll call on you immediately after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for calling, for the question. Thank you, Honorable Sir, for the question. Yeah, there are a lot of interventions which we've, farmers or what's it called, agro entrepreneurs can benefit from at single digits. Or presently, all the bank interventions are at 5%, and that's because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the consequences from it. And usually, our interventions are at 9%. And going straight to his question about prime anchors, yes, we have interventions where the private sector can participate in to finance their projects, agricultural projects. The first one I would say is the Anchor Borrowers Program, where you can come in as a prime anchor. And as a prime anchor, what is expected of you is to aggregate, you have to provide the land, because you have to aggregate the farmers. Then also, beyond that, you must be able to add requisite collateral for you to be able to access this facility. Recently, the bank has been making engaging banks, that's the deposit money banks, to see how we can really address the challenges of collateral. And I can proudly say that right now, for all our agricultural projects, the bank has come forward, that's the CBN, has come forth to say, okay, it will bear 50% of the credit risk in the event of default. Also, beyond that, we are already also discussing with banks to allow farmers to use their land as collateral. Because what banks are saying before now was that getting titles to those lands are usually very difficult. And most of the lands are usually leased, not owned. What's it called? Freehold. So what we're now doing is we've been trying to see how we've been engaging banks so that we can use those lands using the deeds of lease as a collateral. And also, we're also trying to see how we can convince the banks to see the land, yes, before cultivation, they may not have that much value, but after cultivation, they have economic values. So we're trying to convince banks to accept it. And some of them are saying yes, saying they are ready to accept it. Another one we have is the private sector-led AADS, which is the Agricultural Accelerated Development Scheme, which I tried explaining earlier. And the PAADS, as it is called, is actually to help farmers who have large expanse of land, private sector agripreneurs who have a large expanse of land, to come around to CBN and say, yes, I have this land, I want to clear it. Cost of clearing in the southern part of Nigeria is usually huge. So the CBN has created an intervention to help the private sector clear the land. After clearing the land, then because of the expanse, we're talking about agro. We're going for what we call agro scheme. After you've cleared and done the clearing, put infrastructure, access to market. You need access road so that you can link the farm to the market, and you've been able to agree with the farmer. Then you can now come under agro, what's it called, anchor branch program, for us to finance the cultivation of the farm. So we have a number of interventions you can benefit from. If the farm is already existing, anchor branch program is for you. If you're thinking of clearing the land, then cultivating new plantation, then you have two interventions you can look into. The first one is the PADS, for you to clear the land and provide facility, infrastructure, and every other thing. And why the second one is the anchor branch program to support the seedling nurseries, the supply, access to quality agro inputs, and also to cultivate the land. So we have a lot of, those two interventions to support private sector entrepreneurs. And I'm still looking at the question, which I'm trying to see. Yes, you also said, I hope I'm right. I think that's it. I hope I've answered your question. Thank you.
I think it was not concerned about the interest rate. You wanted very low
interest rate presently is 5%. It's 5%.
Okay.
Yeah.
However, that's the confirmation he wants.
Yeah. However, it will revert back to 9% by 1st of March 2021. Okay. That's it. It was the COVID pandemic that made us to reduce our interest rate to 5% for a year, just for 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you. He was asking, he wanted single digits, so it's still within single digits.
Yeah, it's still single digits. Yeah, single digits. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for your kind.
You're welcome, sir. You're welcome. Sorry, I just want to ask one more thing, sir. Is it possible I get the honorable's phone number? Because having 10,000 hectares, it's really good for us. We would like to deal with him. I would like to have his details, please.
I'm sure he's heard you. Will also your own details are public, so I'm sure you'll get in touch with him. Okay. So,
thank you, sir.
Can I have Honorable Tunde Giwa unmute and ask his question? He had raised his hand earlier on. Can you unmute and ask your question? Tunde Giwa.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, my question is piggyback to what Dr. Adebowale had just mentioned. My question is in regards to, I'm not sure who can answer this, but what are the challenges that if farmers are having as far as rejuvenating their land? What are the challenges that they are facing as far as rejuvenating their crops or maybe starting a new one based on the fact that some of these trees are aging and they need to be replaced? Thank you.
Sir, is that for me, sir? If that's for me,
no, okay, I just believe that I don't know who can answer that. Somebody on the ground, somebody.
If I'm to talk from the CBN perspective, what we've noticed when it comes to rejuvenating is, I would say the first thing is access to high yielding seedlings. And that's one thing, because the CBN, whatever we do, we're more focused on production, increasing production and productivity. So what we've discovered, when we did a market scoping, we discovered that access to high-yielding seedlings is a major challenge. is a major challenge. Then what most farmers do is what we call grafting. And studies have shown that grafting, the success rate in grafting is quite low. So the CBN, whenever we discuss regeneration, that's estate or farmland regeneration, we don't consider grafting. We go straight away to complete cultivation, replanting of everything, either in phases or complete 100%. So what we now do is we go out there, we seek out high-yielding and disease-resistant seedlings. And another thing we try to do is, because of the intense labor requirement as required for cocoa cultivation, we're also trying to encourage youth. Because once the farmers are aging, their contribution, there is a limit to what they can do. And so we try to, one, encourage the youth, then two, try to see how mechanization can come into play. Those are the things we look around because we talk about the aging farmers issue. Then also, we try to also, we've been having discussion, like I said earlier, we look at end-to-end support to the industry. So what we do is, we are presently supporting a couple of agro input manufacturers in the country. Because oftentimes we discover that even, yes, the seedlings are soil, specific. Same happens with the inputs. Inputs must be developed domestically to in the context of what is being is meant to be used for. So those are things we're looking at. And because access to the quality inputs are not there. And also another thing is access to finance, which the CBN has really come strong into. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Can I make a contribution there?
Okay, a quick one.
Can I make a contribution there?
Please go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. I just in terms of access to. Just in terms of access to seedlings, I mean, we are happy to what do they call it? Develop or grow the seedlings because we have a seed farm. So we are happy to. I mean, if anyone is interested, and I mean, there have been instances where Ghana has done seedlings for Liberia and Sierra Leone. So we are happy to once you place the order, we can organize.
I think the line has gone. That was an intervention from Nana from Ghana. So I think we was commenting that he's able to help and intervene in that area. But I know his network is pretty poor. Again, the whole idea of this is issue of networking. Again, that's a contact that you can follow up with. Let me go on to the next question. I have Dr. Carrie Pemberton from Cambridge, who also has a question. Dr. Pemberton, you're on.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's been a joy to be listening into the conversations that have been happening today. I run a centre that looks at human trafficking and forced labour. And of course, some of the people I've met coming over the Mediterranean into in Sicily have been actually cocoa farmers who've given up. And that's caused me to get in touch with the whole cocoa movement in Nigeria, and over Thompson and his fabulous network and this fabulous day today. So thank you very much indeed for inviting me to listen. Now, when I'm working on human trafficking issues, I'm always looking at systems and seeing where the maximum leverage and the huge problems, the volume of problems are really arising from. And as I've been listening to the discussions, I can hear multiple points of leverage and change that need to happen. I think what really made me prick up my ears in one of the first interventions, panel pieces, was about the issue of 75% or something like that of Nigeria's income is coming from oil, and we know what the pressure on that is going to be. You're going to be squeezed out in terms of oil as fuel maybe not for petrochemicals and plastics, but that's pressure is going to be on too. So cocoa really is front and center. What is going on there? And really what I didn't hear enough on, in my view, was the capture of your whole value chain of your marketplaces that you'd like to be able to access, because those are legacy monopolies that have been well truly captured by the northern economies. So what do you do about that? And then I hear, oh, well, we'll segment and go for our own internal African markets. What would really help me understand a bit more how you're going to do that is to see a report of actually how you're going to do that and what the access is, because I'm now hearing from Singapore the opening up and investment for access into that marketplace. I'd like to know how you're going to secure that whilst your infrastructure for processing isn't strong. I also have an alert button when I hear what is happening in cocoa, which happened to rice in the 1960s and 1970s, about being sold in especially disease-resistant seeds and stopping the grafting processes that local farmers have used for years. That I have a question mark on that. I have a question mark on land being cleared for cultivation. I want to know, I really am interested as to what sort of land is being cleared. Is that forest or is that just scrub? I mean, what is it? And what's wrong with the old plantation arenas? And then the other piece.
Oh, you have to round up. We've taken about 5 questions.
No, I know, I'm sorry, but there we are. It's because the system. And the final one is, you know, this gender issue is a really major issue. It's not just an issue of, oh, women are wanting to be, you know, have their place around the table, etc., etc. Of course we do, but actually that is part of a substantial part of your ground-based both labour force and new entrepreneurial economics coming in from the next generation. And so that's a real front and centre issue as to how ready and how powerful and how much the leadership in your across Pan-African countries are in terms of recognising the economic value at every level of women for the next generation for Pan-African concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. What I'll
Pleasure.
do is that, yes,
Good to be
Mr.
here.
Anatogu is still in the house, so maybe if you please also give a comment along the lines how to get the domestic players ready for competition, because you made a point that post-oil, what are we going to do? But what I want to do is probably take the last question so that we now see who are assigned with them, and we round up the issue of the Q&A. On the issue of the gender area, maybe Princess can also just give further insights along that, or just further comments from that perspective. For the final question, I'll go to Bonko Goodwill. Your hand is up. If you can unmute and probably ask your question so that we can have one final round of answers. Is Goodwill on? If not, I will go to Jerome Nzebun. Jerome Julius Nzebun. If you can unmute and ask your question.
Okay. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you very much.
Just one
delighted.
question.
Yes, it's actually one. I'm so delighted to be part of this meeting, and I'm grateful that today is a great meeting about Africa. I just wanted to, my question was going to the representative of the CBN. And the question, I think I wrote it, and I was asking, how do I'm from Taraba State, from the northern part of the country of Nigeria. I'm asking, how do I access funds for cocoa processing? Because I heard him talking about the CBN being able to offer assistance to people who are interested in processing cocoa. So I'm asking, how do I access funds? Because like all the other speakers have said, one of the major challenge of processing and all the changing of the value here is about finance. So how do I assess funds presently now? Are there opportunities which are currently open for us to assess? I think that would just be it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Like I said, that will be the last intervention I can take care of, and I must apologize if you're unable to take your questions, but time is fast gone. So if Mr. Anatogu is still in the house, can you please speak to the domestic readiness after oil, if you can give us your own perspective on that. And also you can comment on all the things you've heard so far. Then I'll go to Dr. Onobowale. I think you probably answered that question, but again, you can speak to it if there's a different perspective on how we can access funds in Taraba. And
okay.
After, if any of our speakers want to just jump in and just make a general comment, they should please indicate. We'll allow them. They will now close it up. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. I think the question is moving beyond oil and the role of cocoa and our domestic readiness. So essentially, like I mentioned earlier, yes, the pressure will be on oil, and in terms of even for oil, from AfCFTA perspective, the market is in refined petroleum and petrochemical plastics. So that's where the market is. In the agriculture sector, you've got the likes of sugar, palm oil, rubber, and coal. But like you rightly stated, cocoa, you need to go across the value chain. Now, where we are at the moment is really
we can't hear you. I think your voice.
His audio has gone.
His audio has gone.
Can you hear me?
Now you're back on. Now you're back on now.
Okay. So we are not having.
No, the audio is bad.
His audio is bad.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Adebowale, are you there to respond to the?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Nzemdion, for that question. Yeah, I'll be very brief. Yeah, I've mentioned to you about Anchor Browse program, which is meant for cultivation, but you are interested in processing. First, you need to approach your bank, because one, for you to get access to any of our interventions, you must come through a commercial, deposit money bank. So what you do is you approach your bank, tell them, we have a couple of interventions you can look at. We have what we call the race sector support facility. We are through the differentiated cash reserve requirement. We also have what we call the agri, which is a DCRR. We also have what we call the Agri Small and Medium Enterprise Investment Scheme, which is the AXMIS. The AXMIS, you can access up to 10 million. And the requirements are very straightforward. You have to apply, go for a training, and then you apply through the EDI. There are some pre-qualified EDIs. So they will now submit your application to NISA MFB, that's the NISA Microfinance Bank. However, for the DCRR, which is the first one I mentioned, the risk sector support facility, you have to come through a deposit money bank, and your banker of your choice. Then you tell them you want to access DCRR. They would carry out the due diligence, and after that, they forward your application to us. I can assure you, within 7 days, it comes straight to us. It will be processed and approved, and your money is disbursed. But for AXMIS, where you're coming through the NISA Microfinance Bank, they need to carry out their due diligence, approval processes, and every other thing as well. Those two are readily available for you. Just approach your bank or NISA MFB. And for them, NISA MFB has branches in the state and the capital of every state in Nigeria, please. So there is likely one in Jalingo, that's the capital of Taraba State. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes, actually there is.
Sorry, I must close this off now. What I'll just do in rounding up is just to allow special guest, I can see is still on, just to add a few comments just for 1 minute on what he has heard so far, and if he can intervene in any of the questions. And I'll go around all the speakers that are still on so we can round this up. Mr. Abba, Bello, if you are still on, can you please, if you have a few comments just to share with us? If not, I'll go on to, I think I can see Adrian, I can see you as Adrian Okello, you're still on? I'm just trying to give everyone an opportunity. Clive. Princess and Debs. Well, I think time is gone. I must also mention we were expecting Honorable Anwar Tuko, the Group Managing Director of the other group of companies from Adawa, to share his perspectives, but unfortunately he could not join us. He was to talk about cocoa plantation in Adamawa and how to move from being a minor to major player. So on this note, it's for me to thank the organizers and KBC in particular for the opportunity to moderate this event. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it's also a learning opportunity for me. My background is more in finance, but I'm also dabbling into that cultural area. So I've also learned from the distinguished speakers that have come on today. So at this point, it's just for me now to hand over back to Yemisi Jenkins, who will now bring on His Majesty. So Yemisi, over to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Abimbola. Very interesting conversation and very engaging speakers and participants. So at this point, I would like to introduce or bring on somebody that we all know who has put the brain behind this, the vision behind all of this. His Royal Majesty Abba Dokun Thompson, the Oloni of Eti-Oni in Osun State. KBC. Can I find you? Okay, I can find you.
Yes, that's unmuted now. Okay. I'll say it again. Your Excellency, the High Commissioner for St. Lucia in the UK, Honorable Guy Mayers, our special guests, Mr. Abubakar Bello, the MD of NEXIM Bank, and our forum theme speaker, Francis Anatogu. Also, I want to thank our chairman, Admiral Peter Adeniyi, and every speaker that has contributed this afternoon, and particularly our moderator, who was able to capture the entire event. I'm going to try and be very, very brief, and I will start with the last speaker, Mr. Ayo Akinola, who said the farmers are always put at the bottom of the list. That's true, but I'm happy with how he closed his presentation, saying that at the end of the day, he summarized the entire program. And that is what the farmer's position is in the cocoa value chain. I was asked recently at an interview by the Academy of Chocolate, what can the industry do to help? Help in the regards of the challenges the farmers are facing, the communities are facing. And I made them understand that the industry is not really helping the farmers, because the farmers are actually being the ones helping the industry. And what do I mean by that? Without the farming community, there would be no cocoa. Without the farmers who are now getting very old, there will be no sustainability. So we need the women, we need the youths. And before they can actually do that, cocoa must be found to be a dignified, cocoa farming or farming generally must be found to be a dignified profession, a profession that you can be proud of, a profession that after going through education, after going through the training to be white-collared corporate people, you can also be proud to roll up your sleeves and be farmers. And that's where we have started from since 2014 with the Cocoa Renaissance Initiative. And I am happy that we are here today that the Africa Free Trade Agreement is going to be opening up Africa. Earlier on, someone asked a question about rejuvenating of farms. Yes, our farms are getting old, but Cocoa Research Institute of Nigeria has developed about 8 different varieties of cocoa seedlings that are high, fine-flavored, pest resistant, and also fast yielding, and with also good yield results per hectare. So I believe we're on the right track. And Dr. Kerry also mentioned about forest clearing. Forest clearing is not about cutting down the trees. Most of Nigerian cocoa farming, I believe, is the same as in Cameroon and in Uganda and part of Ghana, is about planting cocoa within the forest. So what we're clearing is the weed. It's not about deforestation, but actually reforestation. So every area of ethical production, every area of environmental protection, every area that most of these standards, organizations or certifications question is actually addressed, but it's become an obstacle to be able to improve the value of cocoa from West Africa. And what I can tell everyone now is that we're working on this, and very soon we would come up with our own plan and a framework that would address those issues, because Africa, or West Africa, as Clive Martyr said, does not just produce bulk purchase cocoa, but we produce fine flavored cocoa that has become, or that have become award-winning cocoa for premium and fine chocolate products. And I am happy that even us at Eti-Oni, we are doing our own bit to ensure that we have a place in that market with our own chocolates that is sold in the UK market and made by Duffy's, in partnership with Duffy's of Lincolnshire. I know it's been long, and we also have with us Mr. Victor Liman, who is going to be giving the closing remarks. He's the chief negotiator and the DG of the Nigeria Office of Trade Negotiations, who will be speaking next to me. So I want to thank him as well for making our time to join us. He had to fly into Ghana this morning and is able to join us at this point in time. So thank you very much, everybody. I know it's been a long one, and even though it's virtual, we've all stayed together to participate and share ideas. I believe we are going to be able to do more, and the industry will be better for it at the end of it all. God bless.
Thank you, Your Royal Majesty. I saw Mr. Lima a few minutes ago. Mr. Lima, are you here? Are you still here, rather? I saw him. Oh, I think he got kicked out. I've brought him back in. Mr. Lima, are you back in? Mr. Lima, you need to unmute yourself if you're here. Yes, okay, I can see you.
Yes, I'm here.
What happened there? You need to unmute your...
No, I was actually muted again by the host. I apologize for that. So, Your Excellency, and Your Majesty, Abba Dokun, sorry that I wasn't able to join you from the beginning of this meeting, but as you know, the AfCFTA, we're moving on to the very the heated moment. I mean, we're working towards launching start of trade on the 1st of January 2021, and we're working towards making sure that we provide the required documentations and additions for the summit that is coming up very soon in the next couple of weeks. Having said that, let me say this, that the AfCFTA, I think, is important that we understand what it is about. It's about trading more with ourselves, moving away from 15, 16, 17% intra-Africa trade to perhaps about 25% in year 22 and year 25, and then moving on to perhaps 30, 50 subsequently. It's a huge market size. The expected trillion. And of course, in terms of investment, that's a very high level of ambition, and it is hoped that we are going to be able to achieve the sort of objectives within the AfCFTA. However, I think it will depend on the volume of trade. For Nigeria to take advantage of this, it will depend on the volume of trade per capita that we are able to have with the rest of the African countries of member states of the AfCFTA. And that therefore means that we need to do a whole lot of things, making sure that we are competitive, making sure that we have the right set of infrastructure, making sure that we ensure inclusivity, and making sure that we have a robust framework for financing of MSMEs, of course, the big guys, the big enterprises. I understand I just have 10 to 15 minutes. I will try to do justice to this by just going straight to some of the points that I wanted to make in reflecting on the key speakers that have spoken earlier before me. I know we talk about the understanding of financing policies for import and export in an AfCFTA regime. I have said this in couple of fora, and for MSMEs to be able to engage and participate more effectively and take advantage of the objectives and principles of the AfCFTA, there needs to be a reduction of regulatory and policy bottlenecks within the system. We have to relook at the policy framework when it comes to export. We need to relook at our regulations when it comes. We need to try as much as possible to provide predictability in terms of policy. Not having an environment that encourages policy disconnect and regulatory bottlenecks. You have one agency making regulations in that without having regard to the other agencies' policies and regulations, and then this chokes the effective participation of MSMEs and of course other major players that would make the AfCFTA a success story. So we need to look at that, and NEXIM Bank plays a major role in this. They need to work with CBN on this. They need to work with the development banks and other banking institutions, financial institutions, both within Nigeria and across the region, the ECOWAS region, and the continental level, perhaps global institutions as well, to make sure that regulatory and policy issues, bottlenecks, are clearly addressed. Having said that, I will then move to the second point, which is special reduced interest rates for MSMEs. Because I mean, if you're going to have very high interest rates for MSMEs, some of them don't even have startup capital. And they come to the banks and they give them very high interest rates, and then you give them, and then in terms of the repayment period, the repayment period is about a year's repayment period, 6 months repayment period. How do you expect them to invest and turn around the loans that are given to them? So this becomes this
do you have any cash at all with you?
Presents a difficulty. Is anyone? Can I go on?
Come on, take this thing.
Yes, please go on. Can everybody mute themselves, please? I'll try and mute everyone, and then.
Okay. All right, then another point I want to make is that government may need to underwrite underwrite or guarantee loans to MSMEs, because in some cases you ask for collateral that they don't have. We know that within Nigeria, you have 95, 96% of MSMEs that are businesses out of all the businesses. 95, 96% of businesses are MSMEs, and about 5% of that is just the bigger enterprises. And I think 86% of MSMEs provide employment and 50% of GDP. And so, but however, as important as they are, when you want to treat them individually, they may not have the financial muscle or the resource to be able to provide collaterals to match the loan request that they are making. So there has to be a way of government underwriting loans for MSMEs. It might have to be in groups of MSMEs, 10 MSMEs, maybe 5 MSMEs grouped together, or there has to be a modality on how this can be addressed, so that the issue of collateral don't impede the successful engagement and participation in the AfCFTA, which would ultimately encourage growth, economic growth, and creation of jobs, and of course welfare enhancement as well. And then the issue of standards and quality. I want to speak to agro products and agriculture. As you know, within the EU and of course the AGOA, we have a generalized standard of preferences extended to developing countries, including Nigeria. We enjoy that. But some of the problems we often have around standards and quality of agriculture and agro products that goes into these markets. I've had conversation with a couple of organizations within the EU and AGOA, and of course the US, that we need to find a way of partnering in order to build capacity here, because you want to be able to ensure that you have clear-cut standardization, specification, and quality requirements within the AF, so that when the goods goes into the AfCFTA market, and perhaps other global markets, that they meet the quality and standard requirements within those markets. As you know, we're going to be working, trading with South Africa within the AfCFTA, as well as Egypt. They have relatively higher levels of standards and quality. And so we need to get this, we need to understand this properly. Then another thing we should think about is storage facility to store our agro products. Storage facility, it's a problem. So, and by the time a small-scale farmer harvests and they don't have storage facility, in the end, they are going to incur a lot of losses, because they cannot store these products that can then be, of course, used, not just being exported at their primary level, but can then be used for the production of intermediate and finished products in the end, which would then, of course, add more value and create jobs in the end. So, we need to look at transport from source to the factories. We need to look at policy adjustment and alignment to boost effective participation of businesses. And then we also need to move away from export of primary products to intermediate and finished products, which in turn would scale productive capacity and would also lead to regional value chains and global value chains, as well as the creation of value addition, creation of jobs, GDP growth, welfare enhancement, and development. And then as to financing and programs available for cocoa farmers and processors with consideration for the AfCFTA. There have been series of interventions from the federal government of Nigeria to CBN in recent times. However, there may be need for dedicated financing for cocoa and associated components such as chocolate and other byproducts of cocoa. Nigeria is, I know that it's a major producer of cocoa, but then I think we export them at their primary level, and in the end, there is no value addition. In the end, we just, because if I have one cocoa seed and export that out, I just get the money and that's it. But if I have one cocoa seed and then process that cocoa seed, transform them into finished or intermediate products, what I would do, I would not only enrich my pocket or my bank account, but I would have created a job in the end. I would have been able to scale up on productive capacities. I would have in the end be able to, to advance the technical or know-how or transfer to others. And I would have been able to add, to add more value to the economy and of course to the GDP as well. So we need to move away from just primary products of being a raw material warehouse for the rest of the world, because that's what we've been basically doing over the years. So there's need to move away from being a raw material warehouse of the world and scale up on our productive efforts. The rest of consideration is the formality of informal participation of cocoa farmers and traders. There's need for credible, valid data that would allow the verification of those that are actually cocoa farmers, because currently we have problem with the informality of trade in both in Nigeria and across the continent. The informal trade cannot be captured. We don't have verifiable, credible data that can then allow the government to make informed decisions as well as to make informed interventions, key policy interventions, because you need to be able to capture, to know the number of people that, or the number of entities that are engaged in cocoa farming in order to be able to make informed decision and policy making. So that's very important. We need to see how we can get all of this data in place to sort of rely on this data when we are making decisions, and even when we're talking about how much we are trading in terms of volume of trade. And in terms of the kinds of trade that we're into, are we exporting just primary, or we have intermediates, or we have finished products out of cocoa? In Nigeria, though we have a lot of cocoa farmers, but it is unfortunate that we don't seem to have a lot of chocolates produced within the country. I like chocolates, but I buy chocolate from Ghana. So we need to really take time to address this. And finally, cooperative forms a major part of value chains and financial resource, as well as factors of production within the EU and, of course, the US markets and other markets. But nonetheless, that is not the case in Nigeria. This policy space and the regulatory framework, both within Nigeria and the continental level, needs to align with the objectives and the foundational principle of the AfCFTA, which is to boost intra-Africa trade, which is to industrialize, which is to add value, which is to drive investment, encourage inflow of FDIs, which is to build capacity, which is to make sure that the standards of living in both in Nigeria at the continental level, the standard of living will be improved over time. So this is, the AfCFTA, it's beautiful, but we need to make it work. We really need to make it work, because it's, we are all talking and we're all excited about it. But in the end, it will all boil down to what we do. It's not just okay that we're talking about it, we're excited about it, but what we do in the end will determine whether we achieve the expected gains that we are looking at to achieve within the AfCFTA. And we also need to look at capacity and technical support as key to the cooperatives, and also product packaging, standard finance as financing as well for cooperatives. I wouldn't take you much longer because I think I may have used up my time, but I think it's important to say that my office is always open to dialoguing and to working with critical strategic relevant stakeholders across board, but within the continent, at the continental level, and also within Nigeria, to ensure that this is a success. Because it's not just about Nigeria in the end, it's about the continental success, the critical mass of success story that will come out from the continent that will make the AfCFTA to be what we are hoping it will become. Your Excellency, and Your Majesty, Dokun, let me thank you for putting together this program. It's important. I would ask that it shouldn't be a one-off program. It should be a continuum, something that is, because this one-off thing wouldn't really address the issues that we're looking at. But what would address the some of this is that we're looking at is to make sure that we stay at it, that we are resilient and rigorous in examining and addressing all of these issues that we are talking about, and ensuring that in the end that we would become competitive, in the end that we would become inclusive, particularly for women and youth, that we will be able to provide jobs for them, and issues such as NSAS would have been addressed through the policy framework and of course government interventions and regulations. So thank you so much for having me, and I hope to see you again and to engage with you for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lima, for that. Just to pick up on the last thing you said, as it, being a one-off. It is not a one-off. This has been going on for quite a few number of years now, but thanks to Zoom, people are able to attend from all over the world. So maybe hopefully next year you'll be in Eti-Oni with us for the one for 2021. Thank you to everyone. I do apologize that yes, we have gone beyond the time, but I would like to call on Honorable Guy Mayers, the High Commissioner of St. Lucia to the United Kingdom. Your Excellency, are you still here?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, fantastic. So you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. And let me thank His Majesty for inviting me again to your program. I think it was, I joined in almost from the beginning. And despite the fact I'm in my office working, I've been listening in intensely to all what the discussion. And that kind of discussion that was taking place this morning could very well be taking place in St. Lucia. In fact, I have participated in many of those in St. Lucia. And it could well be in reference to bananas, which we grow in St. Lucia. That ongoing discussion as to how we can improve on the product and stop exporting just the raw product to the international community, and how we can add value to the product to increase the returns to the farmers and to the country as a whole. And so that discussion will continue. Very interesting to hear the various perspectives. And what I'm looking for really is partnership. We had discussed since the year before using the Cocoa Festival as another avenue for tourism promotion. And we had discussed bringing the festival to St. Lucia. I was supposed to have come to Nigeria last year, but it didn't work out at the end. And this year, COVID again has prevented us from doing so. So I'm looking for the collaboration between the African continent and the Caribbean in all of those avenues. And I'm hopeful that as things get back to normal in the new year, that I will be able to attend your Cocoa Festival in Nigeria, and that we would be able to, hopefully in May of next year, because we were unable to do it this year, that we can have the scouting group with Your Majesty and yourselves to come to St. Lucia and start putting the plans on the ground to transform our rural community of Soufrière into the Cocoa Festival venue for the region, because we also grow cocoa, and cocoa is one of the 7 products that the government has decided to use to promote the agricultural sector of the country. So we're really looking forward to collaborating with yourselves as we promote the cocoa, and also to promote tourism and cooperation between our people in the Caribbean and Africa. And so I thank you very much for the opportunity of listening in and joining in, and look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for that. The time now is 3 o'clock, and it's 2 o'clock in the United Kingdom. Can I say thank you to everybody that has joined in, our speakers, our special guests. Thank you very much for that. A question just came in. Is it true that some Nigerian cocoa farmers take their produce to Ghana to sell? So I'm so sorry about this. I'm not too sure if we can take this because of time. Kabiesi?
Yes.
Okay, okay, I'll read the question. And my question to the panelists, is it true that some Nigerian